Niners! Fam, you might have noticed the handsome guy on the other side of the frame here with the glasses that need to be explained is Tony. Tony, Tony, each and every year. You know, Tony's like the vet. Tony, I mean, he goes back years when we first started doing this. Tony was one of the first people. And what I'm enjoying is, Tony, what I'm enjoying is you've always been that controversial guy that got the entire comment section going buck wild. I expect nothing different from you today either. So Tony's gonna run down his free agency because the fact is tomorrow free agency gets underway, and he's gonna give you his draft as well. We'll be doing that until draft day. Draft doesn't start till March 29th. So Tony, how you been doing, man?
I've been doing well, and this has really been a fun week. Everything's been changing. This is like my 7th or 8th draft of this whole thing because, you know, just new guys get signed, other guys are unavailable. So I think we have it now, but we'll see how it shakes out. I'm interested to see the comments that we'll see here because I know in years past some people have been happy and others haven't been. So, yeah, we'll see. We'll see what it's all about today.
I love the way Tony puts that spin on it. Unhappy. That's a happiness versus unhappy. And they were very animate in their feeling.
Yep.
So tell me, you are on. And by the way, in the chat, if you've got a question for Tony, he'd be glad to answer it right now. Just make sure I can see it quickly. Put Q and then put your question. Q and then your question, and we'll get it relayed to Tony right away. And we're not going to do the phone calls today because he's got a lot to do here, and we want to see if we get it all covered. So hashtag Q and question. All right, Tony, you are on. I love the new background, by the way, too.
I'm going to start off with the in-house guys, the guys that we have to basically look at if we're going to re-sign or let them go. And I'm doing this by position. I ranked them all and then got them in the same positions, and that's how I grouped them. So first guy we have here, Richard Sherman. I think everybody agrees with me. He has to walk. Just too old. He'd be too much. I think the leadership aspect we can replace at this point. He's been here long enough to make a difference, but he just can't see the field anymore. He's too slow. At the end of the year, he made a lot of business decisions where he just took plays off, didn't want to injure himself. So I think he knew it was time. I think it's time to let him go. I'd rather pay the next guy that I have here. But yeah, Richard Sherman, no thank you. Great guy, just don't want him on the team anymore. Next guy, Jason Verrett. This is interesting. So I have him on a 3-year, $33 million contract. $12 million of that would be guaranteed. For this year, it would be about a $5 million cap hit. So the way I kind of came to that conclusion is if the signing bonus is $12 million, you have to basically divide that by the number of years that he has on the deal. So that would be a $4 million cap hit for this year. And then, you know, a little guarantee here and there, maybe base salary gets you another $1 million. But the one thing I do want to talk about is a club option in year 3. So if you guys are familiar with the Kyle Juszczyk contract, we had a 4th-year club option where in year 4, they chose whether or not they wanted to keep him. I put that in this deal because let's say he gets injured this year and then doesn't play well next year. That 3rd year, we can void the contract completely. So I think that was really important to put in there because you know me, Ron, but before he was even on the team, I was rooting for this guy. This guy has been someone who I wanted for years, back probably since his Pro Bowl season in 2015. And when he came, I was super excited. But I have to realize, too, injury-prone players can't get the same treatment as guys that, you know, play every snap. Like DeForest Buckner, for example, we won't pay him $22 million per year, but we will pay D Ford, you know, 17.5 for not playing on the field. We kind of have to create a delineation between those two types of players. So for me, he's an injury-prone guy. So yeah, the club option, and I'm making sure it's heavily incentive-based. So basically, a number of snaps he plays that will factor into how much money he gets, Pro Bowls, you know, playoff appearances, stuff like that. Those are all incentives that he can reach to earn more money in the contract. So $33 million looks like a lot now for the player he is. But when you factor in that he has to earn all the money, I think it's definitely a contract that both sides would want to do. Yeah, so that's it for him. Next guy is Kella Witherspoon. Sorry?
No, very sensible. I like it.
Yeah.
And if he wusses out and tries to find an easier contract where he doesn't have to bust butt, he doesn't believe in himself, that's fine. He can go.
Yep.
Yeah.
I agree. I agree. He's not worth more than what I just put out, in my opinion. But now we have Akella Witherspoon. I hate Akella Witherspoon. This guy, he has to be the most garbage corner in the league because you look at him, he has all the physical tools. He's so talented. He just doesn't put it together. I will say, though, it's impressive that he got out of Kyle's doghouse at the end of the year.
Yeah.
It seems like nobody else has ever done that. So props to him for that. But I don't want him anymore. Send him to New York. Get Robert Saleh on his train because I know he likes him a lot. I'm just not a fan of him.
But
Yeah.
Tony, you notice though, he has moments of brilliance. I mean, that game against DK, and then of like you're saying, he falls into spoonism all of a sudden. It's weird with him.
I mean, when I kind of completely lost all hope for him was Seattle at the end of the year in 2019 in week 17. He gave up like 4 passes in a row for like 60 yards. And he just kept attacking him. Russ just kept going at him, which was a smart thing to do.
Yeah.
He's not consistent enough. You know, maybe if he goes back to Robert Saleh and he has more confidence, maybe he'll be better. I just don't see it right now. We need to move on from him because he's proven he's a liability most of the time when he's on the field. And you mentioned, too, the moments of brilliance. I'm not paying for moments. I'm paying for consistency. So that's where I had to get rid of him. Next guy, we have slot corner K'Wan Williams. This was hard for me. But you're going to see I have a replacement plan for him who I think is going to be just as good. But K'Wan is one hell of a player. His football IQ is off the charts. He can play man coverage, press man, off man, whatever you want. Zone coverage, he's exceptional. But as a blitzer, too, this goes underrated. He just finds a way to the quarterback. He's more gifted at that than most players in the league, in my opinion. And that's why it was so hard for me to get rid of him because you can do so much more when you have a guy who's basically acting like a third linebacker when you're in nickel sets because – he has to play kind of in the middle area of the field a lot of the time, but he's also a blitzer. So having a guy that's that versatile is very important. I just don't want to pay him $8-9 million per year for a slot corner. I'd rather just move on from him, find a better option, and then, move on with that. So is K'Wan Williams worth the contract that he's going to get? 1,000%, especially if he goes to a place like New York where he can be used creatively. I just don't see it with the team right now, with the situation we're in with our cap space. So K'Wan Williams, I'm going to let him walk.
Tony, the only thing I wonder about, though, his impact on the defense, sometimes it was game determining some of what he did during the course of a game. Where are we going to get that kind of input? Well, are you going to, maybe you got something in mind. Let me listen. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I have something in mind. So it's going to be someone I draft who I see a lot of the same. My comp for that player is actually K'Wan Williams. So we'll go into that during draft time. I really like this player, but I think also you have to look at, we have D'Amico Ryans now, and I'm not sure he's going to be able to use K'Wan in the same ways that Robert Saleh did.
Good point.
Because he's a new guy. He's probably going to take it a little conservative the first year, I would think, to get his mind around everything, to just know what works and what doesn't, the basis where he can build his defense. I don't think there's going to be as much room for creativity this year as Robert Saleh had. And you look at the years prior, 2017, Robert Saleh wasn't throwing in these crazy blitzes and coverages. It was only, year 3, year 4 where he had to kind of step it up and use his mind a little bit more. I don't see D'Amico
and alter his
Ryans.
concepts a little. That's true.
Exactly.
And Tony, we may have seen the best defense and Robert Saleh flexing his mental muscle than ever. Last year was brilliant. Yeah.
He had no pass rush, and they were still top 5 defense in the league. So that says a lot to me. I also think a lot of that equation was having reliable DBs because Emmanuel Mosley showed out as a number 2 corner. Didn't always make the right play, but he always put himself in the right position, and he was coached really well. And then you have Jason Verrett, who's playing like a top 5 corner last year, locking down everyone he plays. So that factors into it. But having no pass rush and having a top 5 defense, that's a whole nother level of creativity that I don't think D'Amico will be able to replicate this year.
Yeah,
so that's my thing with him. I love K'Wan, but we can't keep everyone, unfortunately. That's how the salary cap works. Now I have Jamar Taylor, and I know he's coming off a big injury. I was kind of hesitant to re-sign him, but I do think it's important to have guys who prove to be reliable when you're moving over in a year like this where you have to lose a bunch of guys. So I have him coming back on a 1-year, $1 million deal. When K'Wan was out this year, he played well. He was in the right spot. He wasn't really getting burnt too often. So give him a 1-year deal to prove himself again. And if he shows out, he might get a bigger contract elsewhere. I just think not many other teams will be too interested because of the injury. So we can capitalize on that, keep him as a backup. help the younger guys get up to speed. So, yeah, I just really like Jamar Taylor, what he did last year. Wasn't a huge fan before, but he earned my respect for sure.
Agreed. I was impressed with what he did coming down the stretch. I thought we were dead meat without K1 because K1's
Agreed.
become like the guy that you can lean on and he's going to get it done. There's going to be no slot receiver as long as we're playing K1 to shut him down. Cooper Kupp, Tyler Lockett, these guys, they're not going to have a day. So Jabbar came in and had a great game. A few times I forgot, Jesus, K1's not in the game. That's Jamar Taylor. So I agree. I was devastated when he got hurt. Agreed.
Me too. So I really like him. We're gonna move on now to Dante Johnson. I don't even think I need to make a case for this. We need to let him go. I mean, in special teams too, he gave up that pump block against Arizona, I think it was. So you can't even use him for that. He just routinely gets burnt. I'd rather have a younger guy on the roster who has potential and not him. I just don't like him. And he seems a little arrogant at times too. So I'm just not in the mood. I'd rather just walk away from him and never call his number again. That's kind of where I'm feeling. I'm not sure how everyone else thinks of him, but just not the guy for me.
We're all in lockstep. They keep him on speed dial in the front office. Anytime Dante's not going to make the team, and what's going to end up happening is we're going to come up short like we have almost every year, and they're going to have to call Dante, and suddenly we're going to hear Dante Johnson's reporting in, and we're going to say, "Oh God, please don't let him have to get in," and it's scary.
It is scary because you have a guy like him who isn't reliable and never makes the good play. So I don't think he's worth a roster spot. That's why he's gone. And we have a lot to get through here, so I'm going to speed it up a little bit more.
Okay.
So next guy we have is Jaquaski Tart, strong safety. I say we move on from him. He's never available, and he's been one of my favorite players on the team for years since he's been here. But my issue with him is that he's not always healthy, and you can't be paying a guy $8 to $9 million per year who is an upper tier safety, but you only see him half the time in the year, and you can't rely on him to always be there. So I think a lot of my plan this year is getting rid of guys who aren't on the field too often, because you hurt yourself more when you create a team when you don't know who's going to be there. I'd rather have an average player plays all 16 games than a great one who only plays 6 to 8 games. And that's just the reality of it. So I wish him well. He's been one of my favorite players, but I don't think we need him anymore, quite frankly. I think Tavarius Moore is going to take over the free safety role and move Jimmy Ward into the box to replace Jaquaski Tart at strong safety. I think that's going to be a move that they should make because he proved this year that he's better as a strong safety, in my opinion, than free safety. Even though he has range, he's much more physical in the box, and he's just super reactive. So I'm going to move Jimmy Ward to replace Tart. Sad to see him go, but again, it's a common theme. You just have to let people go sometimes. You kind of have a 2.0 regime going on. You have Shanahan 1.0. You just bring in everyone you can, and then you find the best guys. And then the second part of that down the line is you get rid of the guys that you don't really need anymore, guys that will cost you too much, and guys that, quite frankly, won't be on the field. I think that's part of it. So I appreciate what he's done, but I think we have to move on from him. Anything you want to add to that?
No, I was just concerned with Jimmy being in the box. Is he going to be tough enough to handle that spot? I worry about his durability as far as because he hits hard and he kills himself. Jimmy never gets hurt because of somebody hitting him or anything like that. He hurts himself, which concerns me about him.
It's happened every time, and that's a really, really viable. I wouldn't say viable, but it's a really good thought to think about. It is viable, but that wasn't the word for it. So I just think he's going to get hurt regardless. You can't be scared of putting him in positions to help out the rest of the team when you know he's already a little injury prone. He's one hell of a safety. He's one of the best safeties in football. So you just have to put him wherever, and if he gets hurt, he gets hurt. And you have backups who can, next man up.
Marcel Harris and guys like that. Yeah.
I don't like, but
I understand the thinking, though.
Yeah. Next guys here, Nick Mullins and CJ Beathard. I think it's time to just create a whole new quarterback room, okay? And the issue is Nick Mullins, he's super mature. He knows the offense like the back of his hand, usually makes good decisions, but this year he just proved he doesn't have the arm talent to get things done, and sometimes he'll just throw it into somebody's hands. And you pull for guys like Nick Mullins, but at the same time, you're building a roster here. And he probably won't even play next year because of the injury he had toward the end of the year. So that's also something to factor into it. Sign him down the line maybe if you have no other options, but I just looking at his name right now, I don't know if I could re-sign him again, despite him being so good with what he does mentally. I just think physically he doesn't have it, and it's going to get worse now with the injury. With CJ Beathard, time to move on. I've been saying this for years. He showed me more this year. He looked like a better player, but none of them are always going to make the right decision. They're always going to make mistakes, and they're not reliable. They can't win games, and that's just the truth of it all. Quarterback wins, I think, are a stat in a lot of situations. And when you're talking about backups, it definitely is, because you have the quarterback. If he can win a lot of games, but your backup can't, you're only as good as your backups. So I think it's time to move on from him, try and develop someone new if we can, or just sign a new guy outright in free agency. But we just need to redo the quarterback room, at least the backups, in my opinion.
All right. I agree. As
Yeah.
long as we keep, as long as we keep the guy in New York. I know Salah tried to push him in, but Sam Darnold, a guy worries me. You can't be that bad of a loser and blame it all on the team and coaches. So.
Yeah, I didn't want to trade for him. I just don't think Sam Darnold, he makes great decisions all the time. He makes spectacular plays, but I still think he's a one-read quarterback. And he presents a lot of the same issues that Jimmy has right now. So trading for him is not worth it, in my opinion.
It's a lateral move at best, right?
Yeah. That too. Mentally, he's not tough either. He just does like the little ghost stuff in the pocket where he just starts sliding around when nothing is in front of him or near him, kind of like Jimmy. So, yeah, I'm not a fan. But let's move on now. Kyle Juszczyk, fullback. I had to think a lot about this one, because Kyle Juszczyk might be the best fullback of all time, just looking at what he's been doing and what he can do. This was hard for me. And I think ultimately they will re-sign him. I think they're in the works of that right now. But I just don't think I can re-sign him, because he only plays about 30 to 40% of the snaps when he's on the field, right? He doesn't get a ton of touches, so you're basically paying a blocker $5 million per year who does an amazing job, and he's a great mismatch for defense. But the way Kyle's using him right now, I don't think warrants $5 million. Now, let's say they bump his snap count up to 60%, and now he gets a couple touches a game as opposed to a couple every few games. I think then it would be worth it. But looking at the way the offense is going, I think it would be much better to invest in other places in the team than pay Kyle Juszczyk, who deserves the money every bit. But I just think this year with the cap going down, you can't pay guys like this who aren't seeing the field at least half the time. So it was really tough. This was probably the hardest decision I had to make. I think ultimately, Kyle, go ahead.
John tweeted early today that he's excited about coming close anyway to a deal with Juice. I thought he's going to head back to the East Coast, but it looks like maybe not. But we'll see. But you're right. With the amount of work he does per game, it is a little ludicrous, but it's such quality work each time, though, Tony.
Exactly.
Just about.
And that's a struggle here. If they re-sign him, I'll be happy. And if they don't, I'll be happy too. I think you could go either way on this. I don't think there's one right answer. I think if Kyle wanted to, he could take fullbacks out completely like Sean McVay has in his offense and replace it with wide receiver motions. And that's how you manipulate the defense. But right now, I don't see a place for him to be earning $5 to $6 million per year the way the cap is. Our other running backs, Tevin Coleman, Jerick McKinnon, they just look slow, old, tired, injury prone. We need to get a fresh set of legs in the backfield behind Raheem Mostert and Jeff Wilson. Just guys who can receive. And there's a guy later on that we'll talk about to replace Jerick McKinnon, who I'm really excited about. But we'll get down to that point when the time comes later in the show. So we just need new guys in the backfield. I don't think we can rely on them. And when they do play, it's not quality work. So, let's let them walk. Next guys we have are the receivers, Kendrick Bourne and Trent Taylor. I'm going to let both of them go for different reasons. I think Kendrick Bourne is worthy of the money that he'll get in free agency, but I don't want to keep paying a guy $4 million, $5 million to be my number 3 receiver when I can replace him with other guys that are going to be cheaper and more dynamic. And he's been a guy you can rely on. I'm not going to argue that, but the drop issues are still there. And I'd rather use the cap space to invest into maybe some draft capital and get guys that way and save a couple million and maybe have an even better player at that point. I just think Kendrick Bourne, for what he's done, he's going to deserve every penny he gets, but we don't have room for him. You can't re-sign everybody, especially these guys that make a little impact, but you could probably replace that impact later on with who you sign. And for Trent Taylor, the injuries have killed him, right? He just doesn't separate anymore. even though he tries super hard, I look back at the Green Bay game, he was stuck to the DB like glue. He couldn't get off of them. It was really hard to see and really hard to watch. So I think there's better guys you can put in the slot, and there really isn't a need for a guy like him on the team right now with the way he is playing. He just can't separate. And then on special teams, he dropped a punt, I believe, too, so you can't even rely on him for that. I just think it's time to move on. But yeah, Trent Taylor, Kendrick Bourne, I wish them well, but I don't see a spot for them on the team anymore. All right. That's about halfway down the list. Is there anything you want to add? I know I've been talking a lot. I'm trying to make sure it's
it's your show, Tony. Did you want to field any questions right now? You want to finish up with the free agency?
We can do some questions right now. I was seeing one. Do you think Trent Williams will be re-signed? I think ultimately he won't be re-signed. Part of my plan is re-signing him, which we'll talk about. I think it's the second guy up, actually, from where we are right now. I think we should re-sign him, but if we don't, which I think will happen, then we'll just have to live with it. We'll talk about Trent Williams a little more in a second here. Let me try and see some more questions. Do you think, or why do you think Rhett is going to get that much? He won't get that. Sorry, Tony, that won't happen. I disagree. I disagree because you saw his work last year. He's still, I think, 29 years old. He will definitely command a 3-year contract. And if teams put it in a way to where they can protect themselves the way I did, I think a lot of teams will be up for that. I think he's worth anywhere from 9 to 12 million per year. So I do see him getting that much. And ultimately, your buyer is your market. So if there's one team that thinks he's worth that much, then he is worth that much. So yeah, I respect the question, but I disagree. Will Jason Trent Hill get done today or tomorrow, in your opinion? I don't think they're getting done today. I think they'll get done. I don't even think tomorrow's when they're going to get done. I think both of the guys are going to look at their options in free agency. Juszczyk, in my opinion, he could sign very, very soon. But I think he's ultimately going to look at the money elsewhere and see what he has in San Francisco. I think the Niners put a strong offer for Trent Williams. That's what it seems like, but he's trying to play coy and test the market a little bit. So I don't think we'll hear any news on them for a few days, for being honest.
Yeah, because they have until Wednesday for those exclusive rights to negotiate. But yeah, you're right. Trent, I have a feeling he's curious as to what a left tackle gets these days. He said that. It kind of scared me. I said, Trent, why do you want to know that? Maybe we can relay that information to you some other way. Sign the contract, please.
Exactly.
Exactly. Tony, somebody asked, you see that question about how can we get rid of D Ford?
That's a tough one. And I was going to talk about that later when we got to the other stuff, but I'll talk about it right now. The issue with him is in his contract, there's basically an injury guarantee, and you can't cut him right now if he doesn't pass a physical. You can't even waive him if he doesn't pass a physical. So if you cut him, you probably have to go through injury settlements and whatnot, and that would take a long time. It just isn't worth it at this point. I don't even think they could legally cut him right now. So if he passes a physical, we can cut him this year, save $5 million. If we cut him, I think after June 1st, it would be around, I think, $9 million, if I'm being correct.
It increases after June 1st, true.
Because instead of just paying this year, you're adding up the remaining years of the contract and splitting it by the amount of years that is left on the contract. So if he was due 5 this year, 12 next year, you would divide that by 2 for the 2 years he has left, and you would pay 8.5 the next 2 years. That's how much you would save.
Tony, notice they just signed Juice, and it's according to more than one person, so this must be real.
5-year, $27 million. Like I said, I'm not upset with it. I'm actually happy because he's a great player. I just want them to use him more in the offense, not 30 to 40% of snaps. I want them to involve him more in the passing game too, because he's one hell of a receiver. He can act as a slot receiver at times. So, I'm actually kind of happy about that. It wasn't in my plan, but he's a great player and he deserves the money. And I think ultimately he could have gotten $6 million, $7 million elsewhere if he really wanted to. But I think we're good for now. But back to D4, we can't cut him. We just legally can't. So we have to wait till he passes a physical. He might retire too. So we'll see what that happens or when that happens. But yeah, I wish we could. Just something we have to wait for down the line.
True. We're going to find out soon.
Exactly.
All right, Tony.
Anything else?
No. You caught all the questions I was going to ask you anyway. Pass on to you. So good job. All right.
All right.
Let's hear more.
Next guy, Jordan Reed. I'm going to let him walk. He played well this year, but we have Ross Dwelly. I think we need to see more of Charlie Warner, maybe get another guy in the draft. But I think Dwelly's proven he can be a solid number 2, and he's a much better blocker than Jordan Reed. So yeah, I just don't see a need to bring him back because the way he played, he could get anywhere from 3 to 4 million from a team this year, in my opinion. So I just don't think it's worth it paying for a second or third string tight end. Next guy, Trent Williams. I am re-signing him. It seems like I'm going away from everybody, but there's a reason why. And all these guys will get replaced. I made sure that it made sense. I wasn't just like cutting 8 receivers and only bringing back one guy in free agency in the draft. I made sure all the stuff made sense beforehand. So seems like I'm cutting everyone. There's a reason for it. So Trent Williams, anyway, I'm signing him to a 4-year, $92.4 million deal where $40 million is guaranteed. And the way they structure it, it'll be worth around $14.5 million cap hit this year. The way it came to that number is basically David Bakhtiari is getting paid $23 per year. He's the highest paid left tackle in football. So you just give Trent a little more. He's still the highest paid left tackle ever, but you can save yourself a little bit, maybe a couple million on the contract. And he comes back and he's happy. The thing is, he's just an amazing scheme fit. He's one of the best left tackles I've ever seen in my life. He's so athletic. He pass protects really well. In the run game, he's a mauler. You just can't replace him. And people talk about Rashawn Slater in the draft or Christian Darrisaw. They're not going to have anywhere near the impact that Trent Williams is going to have on the team. And I think ultimately taking the year off, he added a few years to his NFL life. So I think you have to re-sign him. He's your left tackle. That's one of the positions you have to pay: quarterback, left tackle, and corner, in my opinion.
And having the best in the game, Tony, that's always a plus. Tony, we would have gotten laughed at by some of the GMs around the league had they not made that deal. It's not done yet either. So, you know, they've got to get that done or we lose face real badly, not to mention the strain on the offense. But we're going to find out. But, yeah, I like your contract.
Yeah, I like it too. I think it sets up well, gives him the money he wants, and also gets the best guy at that position back on the team. One thing I will say, though, if they don't re-sign him, don't be surprised if Mike McGlinchey moves over to left tackle because they haven't tried him there. And that's what
Tony,
he was drafted.
Does that send any chills or fear through the body?
Oh, fear, for sure.
Mike McGlinchey on the left side, oh, my God. Every snap I'd be watching him instead of watching the rest of the game.
Exactly. I think ultimately what he needs to do is gain like 20 pounds at least because he's so slender and thin, just gets moved around. And then also get Joe Staley back out there. Have him coach up McGlinchey because it seemed like he was making progress with Staley.
He was, I agree.
They drafted him. The plan was he's at right tackle, and when Joe Staley retires, move him to left tackle. They didn't trust him enough, so they went out and got Trent Williams. But if Trent leaves now, I think they're going to have to be forced to move him to left tackle and see what he can do there. And if he's bad, then you only have a year left on the deal, and you can get rid of him.
But Tony, you probably thought of this. If you do lose Trent somehow, isn't Slater in play?
He definitely is in play, but I think at the 12th spot, you have so many other things on your team that you need to address that trading back for me, which we'll talk about, is a better option unless there's a quarterback you absolutely love. Because Slater isn't a home run prospect. I don't think he is. There's a lot that he does need to work on in his game, and taking him at 12 will be a good pick, but I'd rather not do that. I'd rather just get the left tackle taken care of completely. And if that includes signing a right tackle and moving Mike McGlinchey to the left side, then we might have to try it. But, I mean, I hate Mike McGlinchey. You know this. He's one of my least favorite players. So
Better if they would spoon, right?
yeah. Colton Miller better than Mike McGlinchey. Right now, I would agree with that. Colton Miller's coming to his own on the Raiders. And you know what's even crazier, Ronbo? If we didn't win the coin toss for the pick that year, the Raiders would have selected McGlinchey at 9, and we would have been saved.
Yes, and we probably would have picked up Miller because I think the 49ers called him into camp that year.
Yeah, I remember that. I think also maybe a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick or Derwin James would have been in play at 10 too, instead of taking McGlinchey at 9. So anyway, that's in the past. Definitely regret that pick. I didn't like it then. I don't like it now, but we might have to move him to left tackle. I'm just letting everyone know. Don't be surprised if that happens if Trent doesn't get re-signed. Let's see here. I'm just going to go in. There's 4 guys here on the offensive line: Ben Garland, Gronis Grasu, Tony Bergstrom, and Tom Compton. I'm letting them all walk. I think Ben Garland overall, he's been a really reliable player, and he can play anywhere on the interior. Great character guy as well. But I think it's time to move on from him, get in some younger talent, and learn behind a guy that I'm going to sign later on. But he paid his time here. He did a great job, but I just don't think there's room to re-sign him anymore. They bring him back on like a $1 million contract for a year. Wouldn't be opposed to it, but I think it's time to move on. And then the rest of the guys, Grasu, Bergstrom, and Compton, they were mainly just brought in case anything severe happened. They weren't really there because the Niners wanted them, per se. They were just there to cover for injuries. So I don't think they'll have a problem walking away from them, too. You can always replace them with a rookie or another guy in free agency. So, yeah, now we have inside linebacker Joe Walker. I think we can let him walk. I think we're at a point where we have our three starters. We have Alshire, Warner, and Greenlaw. And then the backups, you can just plug and play whoever you want. Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles really came into his own. He's really been improving. I think they're ultimately going to keep 5 linebackers on the roster next year, and I don't see Joe Walker being one of them. I'd rather get a rookie in there at the 5th spot and develop him, because Joe Walker, he's one hell of a special teamer, but he has been slowing down, and he doesn't really offer a whole lot as a backup. He isn't really that type of player. So, yeah, the special teams, we can replace it with someone else. Although it will be hard, it is possible. So I'm going to move on from him. Now we have the defensive linemen. This is going to be the last part of the in-house guys. We have so many guys here that we have to make decisions on, and there were probably, I think, like 8 to 10 who already have moves. So this list has shrunk a little bit in real life. So anyway, DJ Jones, defensive tackle. I'm going to let him walk. I think he's actually a really valuable player that a lot of teams will want, and as a pass rusher too. He came into the league not really doing much, but then you see the game against Seattle in 2019 where he runs over the center. That's when I knew he could be a pass rushing force under the right coaching. So I think he'll ultimately seek more money in free agency, more than we're willing to give. And I think at the same time, we can replenish the backups at that point by drafting well and by signing some good free agents. So yeah, DJ Jones, I'm going to let him walk. Solomon Thomas, I know this seems weird, but I am re-signing him to a 1-year deal worth $800,000. I didn't want to do this, but I will say if you give him a year with Nick Bosa and some other good surrounding pieces, he might be able to show up. I know he's been a bust, and he is a bust. Maybe one of the worst draft picks of all time, considering Patrick Mahomes and Deshaun Watson were there if they wanted them. Really unfortunate looking back, but a year, $800K, I think it's fair for both sides. Get paid basically the minimum, but you can prove yourself this year and show John Lynch that you weren't a mistake. If you play well, get a big contract elsewhere. If not, then we didn't pay you anything. So I think of all the guys here, probably the one I didn't want to re-sign of the guys I did, but I felt like I had to do it at this point. So yeah, Solomon Thomas. Now, we're going to go into defensive
Tony,
end.
that's going to be what you're going to get the pushback on. About DJ Jones, though, we've got a lot of interior linemen, including Kevin Givens, that I really like and does a good job. What's worrisome to me, though? As soon as Jones is given his pink slip, I guarantee he was on his way to Seattle. He looks like what they would love to have. That's the only thing that bugs me.
Yep. I agree. I don't think he's super faithful to the organization. He's made it clear that he's unhappy on Twitter, so let him walk. Don't try and lure him back in when he's not a player that I think is worth it. I think Trent Williams is worth it. I don't think DJ Jones is. So, yeah, now going down the list here, we have Jordan Willis, Deion Jordan. I'm going to let them both walk. Jordan Willis played all right. I think he had a sack or two, but I'd rather bring in some younger talent and some guys that, are just better football players and pay him $1 million or $2 million per year. I think as a defensive line, they need to be recycling guys more often than not, try and get fresh bodies in there as much as possible. And I think he could be worth a contract, but I just don't see it at this point. I don't think he's worth it to bring back on any type of deal, considering that there's other guys we can go after. And Nick Bosa's coming back, Kentavious Street's coming back. A lot of guys that got injured, they'll be back. So I just think there's a limited amount of spots available, and I don't think he is deserving right now as we stand of one of those. Now we have Deion Jordan. Again, same type of deal. He played well when he needed to. Wasn't great. Wasn't always reliable, but he served his purpose. Someone to come in when our whole defensive line was out and I think he served his purpose again, so I'm going to let him walk. Now, here's the interesting one, Kerry Hyder. This was
Ah,
really hard for me because we saw how well he played. He had 9.5 sacks, I believe, this past year. He played really well considering there was not much help on the defensive line for him. I just think he priced himself out. I'm not comfortable paying him 10 mil per year when we have a lot of other things to take care of. And we proved this year too, we can be an amazing defense without a pass rush. And now you have Nick Bosa coming back. Javon Kinlaw should make a little bit of a leap this year too as a pass rusher. I just think we'll be fine without him, and we should invest that money in the secondary because you look at teams like the Patriots, the Steelers, the Ravens, they always have great defenses, and they always pay their DBs, okay? Now, again, the Steelers are going to pay their edge rushers. They might pay Bud Dupree. TJ Watt is definitely getting an extension, but they always pay their corners too. So I just think historically paying your corners is just more of a long-term thing that you should be doing. It is more successful. But Kerry Hyder, I was so tempted to sign him to like a 3-year, $30 million deal. I just think he priced himself out. So, yeah, with Nick Bosa coming back, there is a need for a good number 2, but we can address that in the draft if we need to.
Tony, you're aware of Kerry Hyder's? Because I was wondering, had he already put what he'd like to have made public with that? I didn't hear anything about that though. Where are you getting the 30 million, 3-year, 30 million from?
It's just an evaluation based on guys that have gotten paid the past year or two and where his production lined up. I think he's going to be a mid-tier pass rusher. So those guys usually get between 8 to 10 million.
Yeah.
So again, he priced himself out. He had a really good year with not much help.
Yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, because and then somebody's going to offer him that much, possibly. But in this cash-strapped year, Tony, you may be able to give him an incentive-packed contract that extends beyond that 30 million. Can he reach it? Is the thing. And if he can, good. If not, we're still got a good pressure guy, and Nick, because Nick's going to need somebody to represent on the other side. We'll see, though. I like your idea, though. It makes sense to me.
I wouldn't be opposed to that. And another thing, too, we kind of need a speed rusher opposite Nick Bosa. And Kerry Hyder does not fit that description. So playing as a big end is great for 1 year when Nick Bosa is out. But next year, we need someone who can contain the edge a little bit better. And there were times where quarterbacks broke contain and he wasn't able to get to the edge. So that's also another thing. Again,
he
I think
set the edge well. That's true.
Yeah. I think 8 to 10 is his market right now. And I think other teams are going to want a guy like him, especially maybe even Robert Saleh. Bring him in on a couple of years, pay him a little bit now because he is familiar with him, and you can get some decent pressure. So, again, I wouldn't be surprised if they do re-sign him. But for me personally, I'd rather spend that money elsewhere. So last guy here, Ziggy Ansah. He's never healthy. I don't want to pay him any more than we already have. He just plays like 2 games a year, and then he's out.
I think he does it on purpose, Tony. What a scam. And he came in and ripped that bicep on the first snap. Whoa, $1 million made real easy. Oh, you Jesus, Ziggy.
Yeah.
Steven Hernandez, we're aware of that. Somebody else thought we weren't aware of the fact that Juice just got signed. Thanks, Steven Hernandez. Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you. So that is it for in-house moves, in-house free agents. Right now, looking at what I have, we have $9.4 million available, excluding the Mosley contract. I think the cap hit will be around $3 to $4 million for 2021 on his deal. So you can estimate probably around, $5 to $6 million is where we're going to be at after that. But again, for now, 9.4 without the Mosley contract. Moving on to a couple things we can do to create some more money. First guy I have here is Jimmy Garoppolo, and we're going to restructure his deal, and we're going to tell him, look, you're going to take a pay cut. And if you don't want to take a pay cut, then we'll cut you, and you'll get probably $15 million elsewhere from another team because nobody thinks he's worth 25 right now. Nobody in the league. So you tell him, look, you take the pay cut or we cut you, and you'll get paid the same elsewhere. And if he says, cut me, then just let him go. He's not worth it anyway. But I think ultimately he will take the pay cut. I have a $7 million pay cut right now. So I think his contract right now is around $26 million. So he get paid 19.
27. Yeah. You know what? I think he'll take it, though. And in fact, they probably already told him, listen, if we're going to need some funding, we're going to come in your direction. What's your thought on that? And he'd probably say, fine. In fact, because he backs his guys up. They all backed him up. In
Yep,
every press
exactly.
conference, they come to bat for him. Every guy on the team supports him. Jimmy knows he's got that kind of love from his teammates. He's got to go to
Exactly.
bat for them if he has to. So I think that'll be an easy deal.
I agree. And I think 7 million is a good number. You still stay above his market value a little bit, but you save a lot of money in the process. Something also I added to this, you have the option to void the contract after the 21 season. So basically, scrap out the 2022 season and just don't think about it anymore. Because I don't think we have 2 years to give him. I think this year is a make or break year. And if he shows out and he stays healthy, franchise tag him and see if he can repeat it. Now, if he doesn't play well, then you don't have him on the hook for another year in 2022, right? You can just let him go. So I think getting rid of that last year on the deal is really important. You keep him for this year because my original plan was to trade him off to New England, get a second-round pick, and then reinvest that pick into a quarterback and trade up. But looking at it now, that's not possible with Cam Newton's deal because I think they're not going to overpay for Jimmy anymore. Before they were, and now they won't. So even though
Not
Cam's
unless he shows something. Yeah, he's got to stay on the
yeah,
field, number one.
exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, really sad to see, but you have to make the best decisions for your football team, and paying him that much right now is not worth it. So again, take the pay cut and void the contract after this season. Now the other guy I have here, Laken Tomlinson. So basically what we're going to be doing here is looking at his contract. So he isn't guaranteed any money this year, okay? So his signing bonus has been paid. He doesn't have any incentives he can, earn immediately based on his prior 2 years of play. There isn't any guaranteed base salary. So what we can do with that is tell him, look, we'll give you a signing bonus right now. We'll turn basically the things that you could earn this year, turn it into guaranteed money, a prorated signing bonus, and we'll extend you a little bit. So the money will last a few years, and you'll still get your money now. It's kind of like a new contract, but you will have to extend him in the process to save a little bit. So what I did, I extended him by 2 years, 15 million, and we're going to turn all of his base salary, okay, 4.5 million of the base salary that isn't guaranteed into a prorated signing bonus, okay? And basically what that does, it makes it so instead of paying him 4.5 million this year against the cap, we can spread it out over 3 years. So this year he'll get paid 1.5, next year it'll be 1.5, and the year after it'll be 1.5 million. So basically what that does, instead of paying 4.5 this year, pay 1.5 million. I know it's a lot of numbers, bear with me. And in turn, you'll save 3 million this year. You'll be on the hook for a little more in the years to come, but this is what they do with every contract in the league. You can't always be thinking about every right move for the future. Now matters too. So that's where I stand with it. If there's any questions in the comments about how this works, please let me know right now. I know for a lot of people, it's a confusing concept. It took me a little bit to wrap my head around too. But that's basically what we're doing. Extend him, turn his base salary into a signing bonus, and spread out that money over the 3 years.
Interesting. Hey, Nick Motown, thanks, man. We got that. 5 years, 27 mil. You know what's really funny, Tony? Looking at offensive linemen, you look at a guy like Trent Williams, and then you look at a guy like Laken Tomlinson, not quite in the same category as Trent, right? But offensive linemen, there's nothing you can offer them as far as incentive. And I always felt bad for them because, what am I going to tell you? If you could avoid well, let's say how many. If you allow no more than 2 or 3 pressures, how do you even deal with that? So they are going to get whatever you decided they're going to get, and that's the best they're going to be able to do. But what you've done with Laken is interesting. It's going to help the team out. And these guys, it's just take one for the team when you make those kind of adjustments with their salary. I like it. Brilliant.
Yeah, I think it's something that they will do ultimately because he will save them a little bit this year. But those are the only other things I have in-house that will do. And after that, we saved 10 million, so we're at about 19.4 million without the Mosley contract. Now we're going to go into free agency. I'm going to take some questions in the comments right now, just for a minute or two.
Yeah.
So again, #Q, and then put in what you want to ask me or Ronbo, and then we'll get back to this in a few minutes. Let me see if there's anything now. What are your thoughts on Jared Maiden? And so do you think he makes an impact this season? I think he really could. I think he could be a good nickel corner. I think he could play safety if he wanted to as well. He's a guy that I think will make the roster, and he's kind of a high upside guy that you want to give a chance in the league. So I think he can make an impact if there's a big injury, and we'll see where that goes when the time comes.
Very good. Very good.
All right.
Tony, because I noticed you're noticing all the questions, so I'm going to go ahead and let you. And you see, Taryn did. You see the one with Taryn, though? He says, why not make more of an effort to sign Hyder and let Solomon Thomas walk?
Yeah, I think that could work too. But again, just the amount of money that we're paying Solomon Thomas and not paying Kerry Hyder, I think it's just, for me, a no-brainer when you're trying to save cap space. It's like a 7 to 8 million difference between the two contracts. So again, I won't be opposed to Kerry Hyder being re-signed, but for me, the way I envision the team, I'd rather let him go and pay some guys in the secondary, or just really invest in the secondary and replace Kerry Hyder in the draft or with some decent free agents.
Yeah, and that's pretty much what Tony was explaining in the first place, because everybody knows Solomon Thomas is probably not worth as much as Kerry Hyder, but for what we're doing here and manipulating the roster and allocating funds in a different direction, that's pretty much what Tony's doing there.
Yeah. All right. Thoughts on the Juice deal? I think it's a great deal. We'll see what the numbers are, guaranteed money, if there's an option for the 5th year. So we'll see what that's like. But I think ultimately, if they can use him more this year in the ways that he's successful and can help the team, it'll be more than worth it. He's one hell of a player. I think he's the best fullback of all time, just the way he is, how versatile he is, and what he can do as a blocker. So I like it. I didn't do it in this one, mainly for salary cap reasons. But again, I'm not opposed to it. I like the signing. All right, last question here. Y'all's current cap situation, and who do you think your projected first rounder will be? We'll get into the draft stuff after free agency here. The cap situation, I think it's pretty good, but we have a lot of players we have to re-sign, so it'll take some maneuvering. But I think we have the 12th most right now in the league, so that's something to really be happy about. So yeah, it's not a bad cap situation. It's better than most right now. Because again, we have a lot of money we can throw in many different directions. You have teams like the Saints who are 70 million over the cap. They just cut everybody. So I'm glad we're not in that.
I can't imagine how they're going to get under that. It's going to be fun to watch them, and the Rams are not doing well with that cap situation.
Yeah, the Rams
Taryn
are
Lewis
still
also,
over 30 million.
Oh, and Taryn Lewis has also got the question of thoughts on Jaron Maiden. Since we're talking about safeties, because I still want a tougher guy put in that box. Maiden is probably a little tougher than Jimmy. What do you think about that?
I think he is, but Jimmy's just a much better football player.
Jimmy's got talent, though.
Yeah. He can guard anyone. Maiden is a really good player, and he has talent, but it's not all there yet. And I don't think he's a starting safety right now. As a special teamer and as a backup, he could develop into a starting safety or nickel corner at one point. I think he can play either spot. He's that versatile. Let's see here. Will the Niners sign Juju Smith-Schuster? We'll see in a minute, okay? I'll get into that in a second. Get to the draft. We will do that after free agency. What do you think of Keanu Neal's our new strong safety? Again, I'll get into that in free agency right now. I'm not opposed to it, but you guys will see what my thought process is on what I do with him. And I think that's it. We have the 9th most now. All right, we're good. We're good. I think we have everything. With the Emmanuel Mosley deal, I think that could drop again to 11 or 12 when we get those numbers. But again, being at 9 in any situation is really good. So I'm happy with that. All right. I think we're good, Ronbo. What do you say?
I'm loving it. Well thought out. I like it, Tony. I see some things I'm wishing they would go another direction, but I see what you've done with it, and it makes sense. Even that's why I had nothing to say about Solomon Thomas versus Kerry Hyder. It makes sense, actually. So
yeah, it makes sense, and there's always different perspectives, and that's why I don't really take anything personally in the comments. When people are voicing their opinions, because there's always a different direction. Sure. You can only win in so many ways, but there are a lot of ways you can win. And it doesn't mean signing the exact guys that someone else does. So different visions can still win at the same rate. So, yeah, I think there's a lot of valid opinions, and bringing back Kerry Hyder again wouldn't be a bad option.
And I love your mindset, too. You didn't overreact to some of what you saw during the course of last season, because everybody was up hot for Kerry Hyder. Opposite, Nick comes back, Kerry Hyder on the other side, let's go. But in reality, Kerry does not set the edge well, and you can always just go ahead and let Eric Armstead continue to do that because he does set the edge well. And then you go ahead and you get that speed rusher that you bring in on those third down situations where you know there's going to be a pass. You can get that kid out of the college ranks possibly. But go ahead, continue.
And we'll go into that in a minute too. But free agency, I'm excited for this, and there's not going to be any splash deals like giving someone $14 million, $15 million per year. Juju's not on here for the person who asked about that. He will not be on here. But these are all quality signings, in my opinion, and they fill a need on the team this year and for a couple of these guys next year as well. So I'm excited. Let's get right into it. So the first guy I have here is Emmanuel Sanders on a 2-year, $11 million deal. I have $6 million of that guaranteed, and this year the cap hit will be around $5 million. So I think here he's become a number 3 receiver, a good number 3 receiver. I think just his age, he's been declining. And I heard too, I was watching Chris Sims talk about this, and he was told that Emmanuel Sanders is a type of guy to where he can't practice all the time. You just have to wait for Sundays. So his body is coming down, but you're losing some leadership all over the team, and you have to replace that in some way. And he proved that he made a real difference in the wide receiver room. And I'd be so happy to see what he could do with Brandon Ayuk because he had a huge impact on Deebo Samuel. You saw Deebo Samuel in the first 8 games. He was good, right? But then when Emmanuel Sanders comes along, he's a better receiver. He's cooking people off the line now. So this is more for me about bringing up the younger guys and having a reliable third option more than anything. And for the people here, someone said I was reading off a script. I'm just looking at the deal right now, trying to think through it. I don't have anything planned out as, you know, aside from the numbers. So this is all just coming from my head right now. I just think with him, you're paying more for leadership and you're getting it at a $5 million per year valuation, which I think is really good. You can never pay for locker room presences and leadership more. And that's why, again, the Quan Alexander signing, it looks bad now, but he made a real impact in the locker room. So that's why I'm not mad at it. So anyway, I was getting off point a little bit. Emmanuel Sanders, he'll be serviceable, but he's mainly there for the receivers and for the locker room. All right. Now we have Alex Mack, and this is a fan favorite. I know everybody wants him. He's played with Kyle Shanahan in 2 different spots, in Cleveland and in Atlanta, and he's still a great center in the league. I think ultimately a lot of what we saw this year in terms of blitzes coming in and the quarterback being confused and there's always a free guy off the edge, the center's always communicating with the offensive line and with the quarterback sometimes too. He has to be a really, really smart player. He has to be able to see where they're shifting their blitzes to, right? So if they shift left, you want to shift your line to the left. He has to ID who the Mike is, which is going to be basically the leader of the defense. So he needs to find where that guy is and figure him out. Then also you need to be able to see what your opponent did on film and apply that to what you did that week, much like a quarterback. And you have to look at the same looks and say they might do this here. I'm going to call this protection or I'm going to slide this way. The center position is the most underrated position in football in terms of importance.
And especially in Kyle's system. And what Tony also mentioned, I just want to piggyback on that real quick. They have to process that immediately. And that's the thing it's the magic about a center like Alex Mack. But go ahead, Tony, because you're ready to break my heart, I can tell.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
But, yeah, I mean, for what I have for Alex Mack here, 2 years, $10 million. I have 6 of that guaranteed with a $4 million cap hit in 2021. And you might be asking, too, for the viewers, why is everything, backloaded? Why do you pay only a little bit in the beginning and then you pay the rest in the end? The way contracts work, if you backload now, you can restructure those deals down the line and sometimes even cut the players before you owe them anything. Yeah. So it's always good for both sides. And if you give them a good signing bonus, then both sides will be happy.
Especially in
so
this
that's why I structure
year.
Everything that way.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
And especially in this cash-strapped year where the cap has taken a tremendous deduction. Yeah, players will understand it. They have to.
Yeah, exactly. And you'll see a lot of 1- and 2-year deals this year, which is basically all I'm paying in free agency because guys want to get back out in the market when there's more money. But you can bring in guys now that can be very serviceable for your teams. You're going to see a lot of mid-tier free agents get paid less than what they're worth this year, taking smaller contracts because they want to get back out next year. So, yeah, Alex Mack, I just think having a guy like him, you saw the impact it had when Hronis Grasu was a starting center. For one, he's a terrible player. For two, guys were coming free off the edge. Guys were just getting open up the middle. They were getting everywhere after the quarterback, and you can't have that. The center is very important. And I know football guys will agree with me, but other guys might just think, some of the younger viewers, I used to be this way. Offensive line isn't even that important, right? Just get all the best skill position players, get Juju, get Odell Beckham, but it doesn't work that way. You have to protect the quarterback.
Got to. He's got to have a
So,
minute. He's got to have a second. He's got to have. And Jimmy's got one of the quickest releases in the league. If Jimmy's getting swamped, you know it's bad. I need for my
yeah,
receivers to be able to break open. I need for that offensive line to just hold just briefly, just long enough. They don't have to be
yeah,
tremendous, but do not let that gate open. That Grasu was like a turnstile. And then
yeah,
you got Grasu doing that, and you got Mike McGlinchey down here getting knocked down by cornerbacks that are below weight.
yeah,
Oh man, that's
exactly.
scary.
It is scary. So you look at what happened in the Super Bowl too. Both their starting tackles were out. Mahomes gets destroyed and he can't throw anywhere. So
Yeah, that's see. Doesn't
center
matter
is
who
a
you have.
very integral part.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I just think Alex Mack is a perfect signing. I think he loved to play with Kyle Shanahan for a couple years and kind of just get back to the level of play that he was once at. He's slowing down a little bit, but he's smarter than he's ever been. So I think that's a great pick to re-sign or to sign in free agency rather. Now we have Kyle Long. We have a 1-year deal worth $3 million, and $2 million of that will be guaranteed. Right? He's probably worth more than $3 million, but coming out of retirement, want to give him a lower contract. He probably will want some more guaranteed money though, because again, he's an older player. So you give him $2 million, it's not that much. And the cap hit for this year, I have it at $3 million, but that's assuming that he meets all the incentives and he gets basically the max contract because he earns it. I think most of these guys here, with the free agents, with these cap hits, will actually be a lot lower than what I'm talking about right now because they won't meet certain incentives in their contract. But I'm playing worst case scenario. So if he does have the full contract go the way he wants to, he'll get fully paid the $3 million. But let's talk about him a little bit. Okay. He moves in space well, which is something that is a prerequisite if you're going to even want to try to be on the team. You have to be able to move in space. And it's really the only reason why Mike McGlinchey's still on the team, because he can move in space. He's also a very smart player. So having a guy next to your center who can help you out a little bit sometimes and just know where the pressure's coming from is very important as well. I think putting a 1-year deal at right guard is a Band-Aid fix, but now you have another year to figure it out, and you're not paying this guy hardly anything for the production that he could give you. So, again, I just don't see a way they can get an elite guard this year with the amount of money that they'll have after re-signing all their guys and with the guys in the draft. I don't think there's anyone that they should pick in the draft in the first round that'll be worth it. So, yeah, that's kind of my 2 cents on that one. Is there anything you want to add?
No, that covers it all. Good.
All right. Let's go to the next guy here. I have Vic Beasley on a 1-year, $2 million contract. Half that's guaranteed, so we'll get $1 million guaranteed. And again, the cap hit at $2 million, assuming he reaches everything. This is a guy that I could see getting $1 million per year, and a guy who I could see getting $5 to $6 million per year. I really didn't know how to evaluate this contract because he is a special player, but he got tossed around the league and nobody wanted him at the same time. So again, I have $2 million here. Don't be surprised if he gets $5 to $6 million elsewhere. But the reason why I signed him, he's kind of a guy who's been a 1-year wonder. In 2016 on the Falcons Super Bowl run, he had 15 and a half sacks, right? So you look at the talent, he's quick. Yeah, go ahead.
No, I think I've always thought Beasley must be a coaching error somewhere. How are
think
you
so.
that gifted and suddenly you can't play? I've seen this too many times. Beasley, something's wrong there with not only him if he has a problem, but there's
I
something else
agree.
going on there. Yeah.
I think there's a big issue here. And if you put him in the wide 9 system, he will set the edge. He will be a fast speed rusher. So that could be kind of like a good rotational player that you throw in there for $2 million per year. And ultimately, I think Dwight Freeney was a huge part of that as well in Atlanta. So if you have a guy like Eric Armstead, maybe, who is experienced, and as much as we hate him, he does have a good arsenal of pass rush moves. You get him with Eric Armstead, let him take him under his wing. Maybe he will improve. But again, if he doesn't work out, you're only paying him $2 million per year.
Tony, you put him on a prove it deal? Because why does he sign for that?
I think he signed to that because he's familiar with Shanahan and he's familiar with the Seattle system. And I think he'll see that he has a much better chance in a wide 9 scheme of creating numbers than in any scheme in the league. And quite frankly, I don't think there's a huge market for him And the teams that could pay 5 to 6 million per year, they'll want him. But some teams probably won't be willing to pay that. And if the money's close, I think a look at the situation here and see they have a really talented defensive line. I will get playing time. And if I can create numbers, I'll be able to go back into the market next year and make a lot of money. I think a lot of the guys here that signed for 1 to 2 years are looking for contending teams. So the Chiefs, the Packers, those teams will get a lot more of these 1-year deals. But then you look at other places and other players where they say, I can create numbers here and I can set myself up more for the future by creating numbers and proving that I can be a good asset to a team. So there's kind of two sides to that story. I think he would sign for this amount if 5 to 6 million wasn't available. But again, I don't know what his market is. It was so hard to gauge. So that's why we're at 1 year, 2 million with this contract. Is there anything else you want to add? I know it's kind of a controversial one.
Yeah. And it's you know what, you're going to get 30 different opinions on that.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything wrong with what you're saying. I understand what some people are saying in the chat as well. So we're going to have to see what Mr. Beasley does in the days ahead. God, he's tough to figure out.
He's really tough. He has the talent, but you just can't put it together. And the 1 year he has White Freeney, taking him under his wing, he plays really, really well. But aside from that, he's been a dud. So again, his market is super hard to gauge, but I think it would be a decent risk reward in terms of signing him to that type of deal.
Agreed. Because when you look at the fact, 15 sacks, that's up there. The madness with our guy from years ago, Smith. Yeah. Alden Smith has all the talent in the world, but there's mental issues. Maybe Beasley has something similar, but he doesn't go as severe, like packing weapons in his car seat as he's driving down the highway. Beasley's got something else going on, though. I'm not sure what that could be. Hey, Big Boys Climb on Big Rig says, Juju ain't coming here. He's afraid Kinlaw will beat him up. Is there some issue between Kinlaw and Juju?
Dude, Kinlaw won that on Instagram, too. So that was really, really funny. But anyway, I don't see the point in paying an upper tier receiver when you have Deebo Samuel, you have Brandon Ayuk, who is a stud. I'm wearing his jersey right now, as you can see. Probably my favorite player on the team, if we're going to be honest here. But you have those guys, and then you can sign a mid-tier guy like Emmanuel Sanders, who isn't a bad guy for the locker room. He's great for the locker room, and he'll have some value outside of just paying him to be a receiver.
I agree,
there's
Tony.
no way Juju comes.
Because if he can light up, because Deebo Samuel took it to the next level after Sanders shows up. Even Kendrick Bourne added something to his game. And I says, we got two receivers. Deebo's a rookie. Bourne has moments of badness, but basically they're a good crew, and they got George Kittle. That's all we've had. Because that's all we've had down to the 2-3 years. Kyle's been looking for his wide receiver core forever. Ayuk and Deebo, that's going to be a real tandem along with George Kittle. I like that.
Yeah.
So if
I really like it.
And real quickly, Tony, Jalen Hurd, what if he can get out of preseason? What do we got there?
I think he's going to be a worse player because when you're coming off the back injury, the ACL, I think it was this year, hip injury, you're not going to be the same player. I really don't know what to expect out of him. He's still a bulldog. He still has the mentality. But in terms of creating separation, I think we could see a lot of what Trent Taylor did this year, where he just can't do it anymore at the level that he could before. So I'm not going to write him off, but I'm not going to count on him being an integral part of the team. Because when you have that many injuries, Jerick McKinnon as well, you have two huge injuries like that, you basically aren't the same player you were. So it really excited me when he came out in 2019 in that preseason and tore it up. But injuries, can't avoid them.
And the thing is, Kyle was going to use him when teams went quickly to get off and on the field. He was going to use Jalen Hurd as a mismatch on some of those downs, and it never came into fruition because Jalen Hurd couldn't stay in the field. He still needs a big guy. He went out and got the big guy from what's the big guy we drafted at 7 last year?
Jawan Jennings.
Yeah. Jennings is. I don't think he's a Jalen Hurd. But I think Kyle is looking for that big guy who could create that problem for the linebackers and everybody else on the field on that exact right down.
And I have that guy. You'll see later on. I did address that. I'm very happy about it. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the team right now, I think what we're missing is a true deep threat and a guy who can just get one-on-ones when we need them.
Give me a speed burner. God, yes.
Exactly. And I think ultimately Ayuk can develop into a deep threat once he is asked to do a little bit less, because he was asked to basically be the number one receiver with no help around him, with Deebo Samuel being out all the time, George Kittle being out, and he played really well. But if you can get him deep more, he has that ability. So yeah, I just don't think we can count on Jalen Hurd right now to be back, but don't write him off either. Let's move on now to the last guy I have here, Adrian Colbert, making a return, 1 year for 1.25 million. 800 of that is guaranteed, or sorry, 600K that is guaranteed. And again, the cap hit, we're assuming he meets all the thresholds and all the incentives to get full value at 1.25 million. I think this is more about depth than anything because he still does have talent. I don't think they've ruled out the possibility of bringing him back. And if it comes to a point where all the best safeties aren't available in free agency anymore, and you do let go of Jaquiski Tart, bringing him in, I mean, give him another shot because he did play well in 2017. 2018 didn't play super well, got injured. But give him another year, and only paying him, just over $1 million, I think it is a good value for him for the potential he has. Now, I'm not sure what he did in Miami. I haven't really gone into that, but from what I saw when he was on the Niners, I wouldn't be opposed to it. I'm not saying I'm rooting for him to come back because I'm not, but in the situation I have here where you do need to get depth, I think he would be a good play here and the best guy available for them for a good price.
I kind of agree. You know why? Because he played his best football with us. He all of a sudden went a little bit into spoonism that last year before they let him go. Like all of a sudden he forgot how to play. But you know what? I think he'd be so happy to get back to San Francisco because he still communicates with the 49ers. He still has nothing but good things to say. He gets involved with some activities that they're not his, they're for 49ers. And I said, well, Colbert is mentally still attached to this team, isn't he?
Yeah, I think he is. So, yeah, I think that would be a good signing. I have right now, after all of the deals that we've done before the draft, we're at about $4.15 million in cap space, excluding the Mosley contract. So expect that number to be super close to even. Probably closer to $1 million, I would think, because they would backload the contract. And he probably won't hit all the incentives. But again, this is basically the lowest that you'll get without knowing Mosley's contract information and being comfortable that you're over the cap. So I feel like there was a lot of progress made here. You get veteran guys who are going to be leaders on your team, and you get guys who basically can be good fill-ins this year while you figure out what you need to do the next year or two.
All right. Makes sense to me. You're reminding me of Parag with the manipulation of funds.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
He's a genius. He's the one guy I don't want to let go. Adam Peters, I didn't really care about when he was getting stuff. Martin Mayhew, I don't think makes a difference. And now he's the GM of Washington. But Parag Marath, we can't lose him. No. He is a genius when it comes to this stuff. So, yeah.
He makes those contracts so it doesn't hurt the 49ers at the same time. Players don't mind signing. And that's why I'm always intrigued with. I said, would I sign that contract? But Parag got him too. All right, good.
Yeah.
So he's amazing.
It's awesome. So, yeah.
Kevin Wong, and Kevin Wong he's taking shots at John Lynch. He says Lynch does nada. You think Kyle fire him for Sims? And thank you, Kevin Wong. Okay. Also, is that Rudy? It's no, okay. 2021 Rams Super Bowl. It's got to be Rudy. Niner cap problems too. Bringing back Jittery G hits cap $26 million for an always injured quarterback. That means no T. Williams. Niners coming in last or up to third in 2021. Rudy, listen and learn. The numbers are already crunching. Your Rams team, being millions and millions of dollars beyond foolishness, should be concerned with what's going on in L.A. Okay, thank you, Winnie.
They're still way over the cap. And again, what I did tonight, we can bring back Trent and make Jimmy take a pay cut, and that's the best case scenario if you can't move off of Jimmy. And what we've seen from Lynch and Shanahan is they just ride the fence with Jimmy, and I'm not really a fan of what they're doing, but I understand what they're doing. They realize if they release Jimmy and they get rid of him and they don't have a good backup plan, they're going to probably lose their jobs. Maybe not Kyle, but I think John Lynch would if they go back to like 5-11 and Jimmy isn't on the roster. So they're playing it safe here by keeping him.
That's a good point. But you know what? The thing is, John stays as long as Kyle says so. You remember what happened in the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Kyle gets hired first. Now you choose your GM. I don't know. Maybe Jed could call him in and say, listen, Kyle, I know our original agreement was that your GM is going to be your GM, but listen, I've got a problem with what's going on now. I want to get somebody that's a little more experienced in here. And I think somebody's already said it. Adam Peters may be in position, should they want to let John go. Peters comes in with all the experience in the world, and he takes over the reins.
Mhm.
That's just my theory.
Yeah, Kyle has all the power in the organization. They extend him, but they don't extend John Lynch. You can see in the personnel moves they make, it's all Kyle Shanahan. You're always drafting offensive guys early and defensive guys later, right? Except for the first round, we know the defensive ends how they go. But Kyle, you just see in the way they sign players and the way they draft players, he has control. And they're always super talented players with injury concerns every single time. So you can look at the moves that way. You can also look at John Lynch kind of taking a shot at Shanahan with Patrick Mahomes, saying that they needed to reconsider. He said it jokingly so he wouldn't get flack for it, but I think deep down he wanted to get a quarterback at 3, despite his relationship with Solomon.
I saw that. He says, I kick myself every day for the Patrick Mahomes miss.
Yep.
Yeah. So
I would too. I mean, it's not even just Mahomes. It's Watson too that you missed on.
yeah.
So
Well. Anyway, Tony, more? Where are we going with this next?
yeah, so now we have the draft. I'm looking here. There aren't any other questions, so I'm just going to move on. So I'm just going to go over quickly. I'm not sure if you have a graphic for this, but these are the draft picks that we have going into the draft. Not making any trades or doing anything. This is what we're coming in with.
Okay,
So-
Tony, I'm sorry. One thing, we did
Yeah.
miss one question there. Tony, Brian Poole could replace Quan. Who's Brian Poole?
I don't want that.
Okay.
Brian Poole, for one, he's like 30 years old. He's probably going to command 5 to 6 million per year. So if you won't pay K1 8, you don't want to have a drop off like that and still pay almost the same amount. There's a guy that we'll talk about in a minute here who, to me, projects as K1 Williams to the NFL. But yeah, I just don't think it's worth it. When you're strapped for cash, you can't be paying a slot corner that much money. And he isn't even amazing to begin with. He's good, but he's nowhere near K1 Williams level. And paying him almost that amount of money just isn't something I'm interested in.
All right.
All right. So again, the selections we have going into the draft without making any moves. We have the 12th overall pick. That's our pick. We have the 43rd overall pick, which is also our pick. We have a compensatory 3rd round pick, which is basically from the Saleh and Mayhew departures for the new thing they implemented this year when a minority gets a head coaching job or GM job. I think the term they use is like a high-ranking official in an organization. You'll get a pick for that. So we're at 102nd overall for that compensatory pick. We also have our 4th and 5th round picks, which are 117 overall and 155 overall. Our 5th round pick from New Orleans from the Quan Alexander trade that we got last year is going to be the 172nd overall pick. And then we also have a compensatory 5th from the Sanders departure last year, which is crazy because we're going to see if we can get him back this year in the way I'm doing things. And we're still getting a pick for him. That's going to be 180 overall. Now we have the 193rd pick, which is our own 6th round pick. We also have a 7th round pick from the New York Jets from the Jordan Willis trade we did last year, where we gave them our 6th round pick in 2022 in exchange for Jordan Willis and a 7th round pick this year. So that's going to be 229 overall. And then our pick in the 7th round is 239. So you can see here, we have a lot of draft picks. We have 10 draft picks. But my issue with this is we only have 2 in the top 100. That's where most of your great players are going to come from, is the top 100, because those are the guys that have the most talent and have less issues. So my goal, my objective here is to get into the top 100 as much as possible and use the lower picks to trade up. Okay. We saw in the Trent Baalke era where you have like 5 picks in the 6th and 7th round, and none of them ever come to fruition. You know, there's always a Trent Brown that comes along every so often, but most of the time they won't hit. So that's where I look at it.
And Trent Brown, that's still the exception to the rule. I still can't get over that to this day. Trent Brown comes in, the last guy picked, and he's one of the highest paid offensive linemen in the NFL. How does that happen? That's not going to happen many times.
Yeah. And that's really an exception to any team. But you look at the numbers, the lower you get in the draft, your chance of having a great player declines. And I know we've gotten George Kittle in round 5. But again, those are diamonds in the rough. You're not guaranteed those guys. You have much more of a guarantee if they're in the top 100.
And they need to go to the right programs too. That a lot of times it has to do with the luck. Everything, just the stars are all lined up. George Kittle went to exactly the right place to go. Trent Brown, Tony, I got to tell you, if there's anybody that is a self-made star, it may be him. He has a lot
I
of brain
think it
farts
is
and he
too.
can't run block, but he can protect a quarterback all day.
He is
Von Miller
incredible.
hates him.
I think a lot of the issues he had in Oakland or Las Vegas now, I think a lot of them were mental and not having drive. But I think now that he's back in New England, that's probably the best place where he can succeed. And they believe in him and they want him.
You're right.
So
He is a mental case, though. That's true. Trent Brown can probably be one of the best offensive linemen in the NFL when he wants to
yeah,
be. But if he's
he
not
proved it.
motivated, he sucks.
And that's with every player in the league. If you're not motivated, it doesn't matter how talented you are. Hard work beats talent when talent doesn't work hard. And he wasn't
True.
willing to put in work. So
True.
I love Trent Brown. He is one of the guys I'd absolutely love to have back, especially having Mike McGlinchey on the other side, acting like a pancake every single time he walks on the field, getting thrown around like a rag doll. But yeah, that was a lot.
I agree.
But all right, you ready for the draft, Ronbo?
Yeah, because but we Tony, you're eating up a lot of clock, but it's interesting. Go ahead.
Yeah, we've been here for a long time, so I'm trying to move this quickly. But so with our first round pick, we have the 12th overall selection. What I'm doing here is I wouldn't be opposed to trading up for a Mac Jones at like 8 or 9. I wouldn't be opposed to even taking Kellen Mond at 12, who I'm really high on. But ultimately, I don't think that's the need that we need to be going after. We have an injured corner in Jason Verrett, and we have a guy in Emmanuel Mosley who can't be a number 1 guy. I would like to select a corner with the first pick. So what I did is I traded down with Chicago. And again, all the trades I'm doing here, I'm not just throwing out random numbers and random draft picks. I'm using the draft chart value thing that there is that Jimmy Johnson and the Cowboys created in the 90s. And most teams use that today. So you can just look up NFL trade value chart and you'll see all the picks. They're assigned a certain amount of points. And basically, you just try and see what fits and what doesn't, equal amount of points on both sides. So that's where everything's coming from. So basically, in that, we can get the 20th overall selection and the 52nd overall selection. And in return, we'll give Chicago the 12th overall pick. So we trade back 8 spots and we get a second-round pick. And with that pick, we're going to have J.C. Horn from South Carolina. He's my cornerback 1 in the class. I think he will slide to around 20, though. And I'll talk about why I like him in a minute. So for guys like him, I'll probably just speak more from what I know, but there's going to be other guys later on that I have a full draft profile from my scouting that I will have ready for them. So if you see me glancing over a lot, it's probably because I'm not too familiar with the player. But J.C. Horn, let's talk about him. So he's super long and fast. He's 6'1". He has a long wingspan. He ran a 4.39 at his pro day a couple days ago.
What?
4.39.
I didn't know about that.
He is one hell of an athlete. He's the son of former Pro Bowl receiver Joe Horn from the Saints. So he has athletics in the family. He has the genes. But let's talk about him a little bit. What I love about him is his mentality and his physicality. The dude goes on the field knowing that he's the best player on the field, and you can't get by him. He is super physical. From what I've seen from this draft class, he's the only guy who I'm confident saying he can guard DK Metcalf on a down-to-down basis.
Yeah, and with speed.
Yeah, I mean, 4.39 speed. Again, I think game speed is much more important, but he's proven in short and intermediate situations he can keep up with anyone on the field. And that's part of why I love him so much. But his alpha mindset, his mentality, his physicality, there's nobody like him in the draft. There's nobody like him. And you also look at what he can do in press man coverage. He is insane. He will press you into the dirt, and you won't be able to get up for a couple plays.
I like that, Tony. I like that. With the hybrid D we're playing these days, we switch back and forth. Zone man, it's necessary. That's why Sherman's getting phased out. Exactly.
That's why we played better without Sherman. And one thing I do want to say, concern I have with him, is off-man coverage. So if you're playing off like 5 to 8 yards, which could be used to disguise your coverage, let's say you have a cover 3 shell, right, where your corners are backed up a little bit. Maybe you want to throw in some man coverage with the same look to throw off the defense. He just gets burnt in off-man coverage too often because he can't get physical and presses receivers into the dirt. So that's one concern I have with him. But he's exceptional in press man. He's great in zone coverage. He's a perfect fit for what we do. it'll be interesting to see what D'Amico Ryans could do with him and try and get him to be a much better off-man coverage player. But looking at him, I mean, he can do everything we'll need him to do, and he can be a great hybrid player. Let's see what else I have here.
But real
Really
quickly,
fluid hips.
one question though. Oh, yeah, I want to know that Farley also similar profile as you're mentioning now. What is your comparison between the two of those?
I think Farley is more raw than J.C. Horn right now.
Okay.
I don't think he has the mindset J.C. Horn has, but he is more athletically gifted. So you kind of have to make that out. I would rather prefer a big corner who acts big and he's super physical with a great mentality than a guy who probably has a little bit more talent but won't give you those same things in return. And a lot of this is divisional. You play every year in hopes of winning your division to give you a better chance of winning the Super Bowl and getting to the playoffs,
True.
right?
Yeah.
So you have to game plan for guys like DK Metcalf and Jason Verrett. He could guard him. Emmanuel Mosley did an okay job against him, but I'm not relying on either of those two because Jason Verrett gets injured and Emmanuel Mosley, again, he's inconsistent when it comes to guarding him. So I want to address that. And you can never have enough corners or receivers. Skill positions, you just can never have enough of them. You always want to be super deep. So even if this guy comes in as a number 3 corner, he'll work his way up quickly. He can guard DK Metcalf. So again, like I was saying, really, really fluid hips. He can move in and out perfectly when he's transitioning from one part of the field to the other. His hips are super fluid. It really impressed me. His hand usage, again, talking about pressing guys into the dirt, it's always in the right spot. So that's ultimately what I saw with him on tape. Now, some negatives I have. Poor tackler, even though he's super physical, he'll just miss tackles outright. He'll be in a wrong position to make tackles. So, again, it can be worked on. It's something that you can teach in the NFL, which is great. You can't really teach a mindset too often. You can't teach the physical traits, God-given ability, but you can teach tackling, which is why I'm comfortable with this pick. Deep speed. This is kind of concerning for me because once he gets his hands on you, you won't be able to get off of him. But if you can beat him deep, the way DK Metcalf got Stephon Gilmore last year, if you don't have safety help.
Over.
Yeah, exactly. Over and over. So if you don't have safety help, he could do that to J.C. Horn as well. I don't see it happening too often. I think they'll have a great game plan for DK Metcalf, but deep speed, I don't trust him on a Tyreek Hill, a Curtis Samuel, guys like that who can just burn you over the top. But against most receivers in the league, I think he'll shut them down more often than not. And then also talking about his aggressiveness, it can lead to 2 issues. Sometimes he takes false steps when he's playing guys. So I saw one time there's a slant and he thought he was breaking out and he cut hard to the outside and the guy just exposed him on a slant route and off-man coverage. So that's something to keep an eye on. He can make the wrong move being too aggressive. And then penalties too, right? You talk about physical guys are more prone to penalties because they'll grab more, they'll be more physical. So those are things to keep in mind. But he's still my top-rated corner in the class for what I want to do. So that's what I have here with J.C. Horn. Is there anything you want to add? Any questions in the comments that you see right now? I'll give a couple seconds for that.
Okay, I see. For Kobe, do you think Horn will be at 20 for a pick?
I think he will be. And that's mainly because the top of the draft is going to have a ton of quarterbacks. You have guys like Jamar Chase, Devontae Smith, Jalen Waddle, who are going to go in the top 15, no doubt. So there's a lot of, limited ability to select other guys outside of those 2 positions. And you add that a lot of teams will have Caleb Farley and Patrick Surtain a lot higher on their boards. He could slide to 20. I can see it happening. And I think he will slide to around 20 unless you have a team that needs an ultra physical corner and trades up for him. But yeah, I can see him being available. Let's move on now. So again,
let me just explain to the folks here. Guys, some of the questions that aren't draft related, we're probably going to wait to see how much time we have when he finishes up his draft because we're running behind time. All right, Tony, go ahead.
Yeah,
so next round.
Yeah, so we got the 2nd round pick from trading back. That'll come into play later. But what we're doing now, so at this point we have the 43rd pick and the 52nd overall pick. When you're trading with teams, they'll always want your better asset, which is the 43rd pick. So instead of trading up from 52, I'm going to trade up from 43 back into the 1st round. Okay. So the trade I have here is with Jacksonville. We're going to trade up to 25, and in return, they'll get our 43rd overall pick and a 2nd round pick next year. And some of you might be thinking, no team is going to trade back 18 spots. But this trade right here, I forgot which trade it was. It was the Steelers moving up, or they might have been moving back, but the Steelers were in it. They moved up about 20 spots, and they gave up a second-round pick to get back into the mid-20s. It's happened before with a team like Jacksonville who's looking to rebuild. Team, I could really see doing that for trading back. So that's why I have it here. It's not unprecedented. The guy I'm selecting at 25 is Azeez Ojulari out of Georgia. He's an edge rusher, a D4 type of guy who can set the edge, who's, super fast, lightning quick first step. And I'm kind of stuttering a little bit right now. There's so much I want to say, and I'm kind of, jumping all over myself here. But
It's okay. Tony, you've got a lot of support behind Aziz. I see his name on social media everywhere, daily. I'm not seeing enough film on him, but he's the people's choice. So
yeah,
good move.
for sure.
Yeah.
He is incredible. He is what D Ford should be. Now, there are concerns because a lot of the times he can't set the edge, but other times he'll just get swallowed up by a blocker, and he isn't always able to. So in the beginning, he'll be a second and third down type of player. But again, even when he's not at that spot in the run game, in the pass game, the talent is probably the best in the class. His first step is lightning quick. His speed to power, just converting speed to power, is incredible. It reminds me a lot of D Ford, Yannick Ngakoue. They just have a knack for being able to abuse whatever tackle they're facing at that point because they can take advantage of how fast they are and get them out of position and then turn that into power. Really, really impressive. His closing burst on any player on the field, on a quarterback, on a running back, even downfield in the flats with receivers, he closes quicker more than probably anyone else in the draft and maybe even more than anyone since Chase Young last year. He is one hell of a player. He is so quick. And for a wide nine scheme where you need a guy on the outside who can just get to the quarterback quickly, perfect fit. Perfect fit.
Third down guy for a while. We beef him up maybe, gets a little maturity, maybe give him a little longer assignments every week. But meantime, you got your D Ford explosion come. Because as I say, Eric Armstead could set the edge. One thing Eric does do is set the edge. So on those downs, let Eric hang out on the outside. Passing downs, put Eric back on the inside. Bring in Aziz. Look out, quarterback.
Yeah, I agree. I want to do a couple more things with him real quickly. Incredible character. He was the first guy ever under Kirby Smart to be a true freshman captain. So that's something to keep out on. Always want to bring in locker room guys. He can drop into coverage if we need to. He projects well as a 3-4 outside linebacker where they're asked to blitz and be in coverage. I think he fits just as well into a wide nine scheme as a defensive end. But if we need to get exotic, you can drop him into coverage and he'll play well. What else do I have here? He's super athletic. Again, we talked about that. Just one hell of an athlete. And he's raw right now, which is kind of a downside. He could improve. He has a limited pass rush arsenal. But you give him a couple years, this dude could be one of the best edge rushers in the league. Easily.
He's going to have Nick. And Nick's already taken Javon Kinlaw under his wing. Nick will have two students. You bring him in because Kinlaw's mimicking every move Nick makes, and he's an interior guy. Nick.
Yeah.
I mean, Javon, you got to do some other things. And you get this kid, too. Nick's got to be his idol. So, good things can happen.
If you give Nick Bosa that type of player where you just give him all the moves that you're using and now he can use his speed too on the outside because of how gifted he is, watch out. He could turn into a 15 sack per year guy consistently if he's deployed right and if he gets the right coaching. So I'm super excited about this. So that's the end with the first round. We trade back and we're able to get two premier guys at their positions who can help us on day one if we need to. But now let's move down to the 52nd overall pick that we acquired from Chicago. I'm going to trade back again. And in that deal with the Buffalo Bills, I'm trading back 9 spots to 61, and we're getting a third-round pick, the 93rd overall. And again, this all matches up with the trade value chart. So these aren't just random numbers. There's stuff that goes into this. And what we'd be giving them is the 52nd overall pick and the 155th overall. So we're using those later picks to get more top 100 picks. And that's really what I'm going after. This is going to be my K1 Williams replacement. We're going to trade back again, but at 61 overall, I have Elijah Molden from Washington. I could see this guy going in the 40s. I mean, the Dolphins took Owa Igbenogany last year at 30, I believe, in the draft in the first round, and he was a great slot corner coming out. So the way the league is moving, you want to have 5 DBs on the field generally at all times. He could be selected as high as the early second round. I could also see him sliding to the fourth round, but right here, I have him at the end of the second round, and we'll talk about why I like him. Okay. He is one of those players. He's just a Swiss Army knife. He's a great blitzer, incredibly high football IQ. He understands where the quarterback's going. He reads the quarterback well. He understands route combinations and where to be. An exceptional blitzer as well. He can play man coverage, zone coverage. He's just a lockdown player. And when you watch him in college, he's everywhere on the field. He's always making plays like a K'Wan Williams. And something I wrote down here, creativity is the key to his success. K'Wan Williams, we saw the first year or two, he was good, right? But he wasn't really being used in a bunch of different ways, and he was only a good slot corner. But now when you start to implement him in so many different ways and you're creative in 2019 and 2020, the sky's the limit for him. So I'm just really excited about this pick. One of my favorite players in the entire draft. Again, Elijah Molden out of Washington. He's a great tackler, very fluid. His athleticism is great, and we'll get down to the negatives in a second here. But he just does everything right, and he closes in on guys quickly. He's just an incredible player. Football IQ is off the charts, but the issues with him basically come down to his size. He's a smaller guy. I think he's listed at 5'9.5". So K'Wan Williams was short as well, but again, size is always something you want to look for. And his speed isn't great. You can't expect him to guard a slot receiver running a 4-3, running go routes and post routes down the field all the time. You kind of have to mix it up a little bit. But I just don't trust his deep speed too often. But he's a smart enough player to where he'll put himself in the right position and kind of overcome the shortcomings that he has physically. But again, the football IQ, he knows where he needs to be, reading the quarterback, super athletic. He's just an amazing football player. My comp again for him is K'Wan Williams. That's what I see when I watch him on film. So yeah, that's the perfect guy to replace him. That's why I didn't go after Brian Poole. That's why I didn't feel the need to re-sign K'Wan, because I had this guy in my back pocket all along.
Yeah. Again, money-saving moves and not sacrificing quality.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what it looks like in the NFL. I worry about defensive backs in the first year in the NFL. Many of them, just the speed, the segue from college ball to the NFL, it just seems to blow them away. They readjust if they got it, but it takes a minute.
Exactly.
Go ahead, continue, Tony.
And that's part of why I re-signed Jamar Taylor, because he's proven he can be reliable if we need him to be. So yeah, now we're moving on with the 93rd pick we just accumulated from that trade with Buffalo moving back. I'm selecting Kyle Trask, and this is a guy that I don't know where he's going to go. He could be in the second round, mid-second round. He could also go in the fourth round. I really don't know where he's going to go. But I have him at 93 here. I think you have to start drafting quarterbacks every year or two, because the only quarterback they've ever drafted is CJ Beathard, and we're seeing how that's turning out. The more you draft quarterbacks, the more you have a chance of landing a good one. And he's a guy who has high upside for me. So Kyle Trask out of Florida. For the Grant Cohn fans, he had nothing to do with my analysis here. I just thought at 93, it was a great value. I know Grant Cohn is probably the most love or hate person in the community, so I understand that there's some Kyle Trask slander in the comments. But let's get into what he does well, okay? First of all, he's big. He has NFL size, and that's important for a lot of teams. He'll stand in the pocket. He'll be durable. He'll do what he needs to do. And again, just the durability thing, that's why size matters. And he has proven he can be durable in college. It's sad that, for a quarterback, that's one of the most important things, but it's just the reality. He's very accurate. And one thing that impressed me at Florida, you see guys like Mac Jones, Zach Wilson, they have incredible protection. Kyle Trask didn't have that protection. And he proved he can move up in the pocket. He can climb the pocket. He can make throws when he needs to. He isn't really fazed by pressure, right? That's something that really stood out to me watching him, is he was used to it, and he can move around in it. And given we're the 49ers, we don't really dress our oh my God, I can't talk right now. I'm getting choked up. We can't dress our offensive line really ever. You want a guy like that who can be comfortable. And you saw CJ Beathard, Nick Mullins, they just couldn't handle pressure sometimes. So that's why he intrigues me so much. He's really good at recognizing one-on-one matchups. I think of all guys, Zach Wilson does it the best, where if he sees a corner has his back turned and his receiver has a step on him, he's just throwing it, and he's throwing it perfectly down the field. Kyle Trask, mentally, he has the same aspect where he's going to go after the guy that's not in a good position. My issue with him is his velocity is good, but his, deep throw velocity is not good. and he throws floaters down the field too often. And in the NFL, that could pose a real issue, which is why he's going to slide on a lot of people's boards. So I look at him and I think great backup. I don't want him to be my starter because he can't throw those deep balls. They're going to bring their safeties down. They won't feel threatened by him. So that's my main issue with him. Also, his mechanics, they can be improved. They're all right. He just needs to get in a consistent place where he has the same stuff going on for him every play. I don't know if I trust us to do that for him, though, because we saw mechanics on all the quarterbacks get worse by the year when they came to San Francisco. Unfortunately, Nick Mullins goes from, guy with decent mechanics coming out of college to sometimes just inconsistent, throwing off his back foot, not really knowing where he needs to put his feet and his hips when he's throwing the football. I
Tony,
could go on and on.
I know, Tony, did you notice, though, did you notice when Rich Scangarello left that we saw deterioration throughout that quarterback room? I wonder.
We'll never get another job.
Yeah. Well, we're going to see what happens when Scangarello comes back. Even Josh Rosen, who's getting a lot of there's a lot of jokes around him. I wonder, can Rich and Kyle in combination turn him into what he potentially could be as well? So I think it's maybe coaching. So maybe Trask.
I think coaching is part of it. But
the thing is, Tony, can you put three quarterbacks? Because Kyle, is he going to keep three quarterbacks now in this financially strapped year?
I think he would if you draft a guy in the third round. Kind of have to keep him on the roster. And then Josh Rosen, I think other teams would want him, and he'd want to protect Rosen because he's a guy that if you feel like you can develop him and you're in the most friendly quarterback system in the league, you kind of want to take a shot with him if your quarterback gets injured. So I think they would bring three this year. They did it last year with Beathard and Mullins because they didn't want to lose either one of them to another team. I think it would be the same situation here. But last thing with Kyle Trask, poor mobility. In the pocket, he's good. He moves around in the pocket. He slides well. But he just can't create plays outside of the pocket, and he doesn't look to either. So that is a big concern. I don't know how he would handle bootlegs when you have to turn your back to the defense. Now you kind of have to make a play if your first read isn't open. We'll see with that how he fares in the NFL. But yeah, good decision maker, good routine throws. He's a good third-round pick, and that's kind of what I came away with. And we need to start getting new guys in the quarterback room. Now, this is my crush, probably my biggest draft crush ever at 102 overall. This guy, I think the offense becomes unstoppable with a good quarterback who stays healthy and then adding this guy. This is the guy that Jerick McKinnon was supposed to be when they signed him to that ridiculous contract a couple of years ago. I'm telling you, Ronbo, right now, I'm pumped about this player, and I have Demetric Felton, running back out of UCLA, at 102 overall. If they picked him in the 60s, I'd be super happy. I think 102 overall in the third round is a good value for most teams, but for this system, he'll play like a first, second round pick if he's used correctly. So let me get into why I like him so much. First of all, he was playing wide receiver for 2 years at UCLA, and then he switched over to running back afterwards just to kind of see what he could do, right? So fast forward, after he becomes a running back, he goes to the Senior Bowl this year, and he says, you know what, I'm going to be a receiver, right? I'm going to take all these one-on-ones with DBs, show them what I can do. Ronbo, I'm telling you right now, the dude was cooking every single player off the line consistently, creating tons of separation against corners.
Tony, give me some size. Give me a size. How big is he?
He is 5'10". He is not, prototypical running back size. I think he could put on a few pounds.
What size would you say? Is he 190, 200?
If he's 190, I think he's 5'9" and a half. So I looked at Mostert's height. He's only 5'10", 195, right? It's not too much off from that. Durability, again, becomes an issue when you're that small. So maybe put on 10 pounds. But the dude's cooking DBs off the line in press coverage. And he's a running back. And when you watch him on film as a running back, too, inside the tackles, he can run inside the tackles, but you probably wouldn't want to because of how small he is. He is perfect for outside zone. He gets to the perimeter. He's always looking for the big play.
Good speed?
He has good speed. It's not like game-breaking speed. It's not Mostert speed, but he has good speed. If he gets out, he's most likely going for a touchdown. So
because I'm thinking jet sweeps with this guy. Jimmy can just hit him on the flat, let him do his thing. Kyle's looking for those kind of guys. You may be on to something.
it's not even just those type of guys. The fact that he's a running back and he can be a receiver when you need him to. Imagine you come out in a 2 running back set. So now they just bring, 2 corners on the field. But now usually when you're playing against 3 receivers, you want to have 3 corners on the field, right? You want to bring in your nickel corner. Well, now they're kind of forced to choose. Do I bring in an extra DB on the field and be more susceptible to run plays? Or do I let Felton motion out wide if he wants to? And now we only have 2 corners on the field and a linebacker is going to be on him. The matchup, nightmare aspect of him, I just don't think there's a better guy in the draft for that. If we're going to be completely honest here. He's a Javid Curtis Samuel type of guy here. So,
and that is a Jerick McKinnon. That's what his original assignment was supposed to be. So yeah,
he's going to be better than Jerick McKinnon ever was, though. So I talked a lot about him. We're going to keep moving on. I know we're pretty behind right now. The next guy I have here is Jamin Davis out of Kentucky, linebacker at pick 117, our own 4th round pick. This guy, to me, he's going to be like a Fred Warner of the draft class, in my opinion, where he gets overlooked. He's going to go on day 2 or day 3, right? But then he comes to the NFL and everyone's like, how did I miss him? So basically, what I see from him, he's an athlete. He's long and fast. But more than that, his football IQ is off the charts. He's a super smart player. He understands how to play linebacker. And you see that on tape. He does the little things right. And like I talked about his IQ, his instincts, he has Fred Warner type instincts. He just kind of knows where to be. And he kind of knows what plays he needs to be involved in. So that's a great aspect I love of him. His awareness is sky high. He'll recognize things across the field when he needs to. I mean, this dude reminds me of a Fred Warner almost. They're not the same player, but he's exceptional in coverage. He's fast. He has high football IQ. And I think he'll get overlooked in the draft. So that's where I have him. I think he could go as early as a 2nd round, but I have him as a 4th round pick here because I think that's where he's going to be. Some negatives, though. He's played in a lot of spots on the defense. He's versatile in that way, but he's still kind of raw at linebacker. He understands how to play it, but he still has some things he needs to work on. So, with a few years, especially under DeMeco Ryans, we saw what he's been able to do with the linebackers, with Fred Warner, with Dre Greenlaw. I just don't think there's going to be any shot that he doesn't develop into an amazing player. I think he played on the weak side originally, and then let's say Dre Greenlaw leaves in 2 years, he can eventually become the Sam linebacker and take over that spot. But yeah, he's an incredible player. He is one hell of a player. And one thing I did note as well, when he's playing against run fits and he's scraping over the top of blockers, sometimes he just misses the run fit and he'll run into blockers and he'll get bottled up. That's a concern I have with him. But the way DeMeco Ryans coaches, that'll be fixed pretty quickly. And we've seen that with all the linebackers we have. So this is a guy I'm super excited about. I would pick him in the 2nd round, but if he's available in the 4th round, which I think he will be, he'd be one hell of a pick. I think we're halfway now.
All right, Tony. Hopefully we can do this in the next 20 minutes or so. Can you wrap that up? Because we're running really along. It's interesting stuff, but we're going to run out of time. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, I know.
I won't interrupt you.
There's a lot here because, there's a lot to go over. But now what I have is from 172 overall, I'm going to package that with a 6th round pick next year for the 157th overall pick with Minnesota. And at 157, I'm going to select Tamarian Terry, Florida State wide receiver. I know a lot of people know who he is. Some probably don't. Let me give you his backstory, okay? 2019, he goes off. He's incredible. He's 4.3 speed, probably 4.4, but he's going to be probably 4.38 to 4.42. That's probably his range that I'd expect from him. But he's 6'4". He is huge, okay? But this year, the reason why he fell so low to a 5th, 6th round grade is he didn't play a whole lot. And when he did play, he wasn't good. But I will say, okay, he had knee injuries all year. So the first 4 games he plays, he has knee injuries. After that, he goes in to get a cleanup surgery. And then he comes back after that. He comes in for 2 games. He doesn't last. He just opts out. So I don't really take much stock in this year. Looking at what he did in 2019, I'm just blown away. He has over-the-top speed. He's a real vertical threat. He is a good route runner, and sometimes his routes get a little rounded, but he can run routes really well. It's kind of like the DK Metcalf route tree, where you kind of stem off go routes and post routes with comebacks, curls, hitches. You'll see a lot of that with him. But when he runs crossers and stuff like that, he runs them well. So that's something to keep an eye out on. Super physical. After the catch, he is a bulldog. He will run through you. He'll run around you. He'll do whatever he needs to do to get in that position. So I love him that way.
That's Kyle football. Yes. All
Exactly.
right.
And he could be what Jalen Hurd could have been, right? A fast, super tall guy who can get one-on-ones for you. Um, he uses his body really well to shield defenders, kind of like DK Metcalf did coming out. So my comp for him is kind of a DK Metcalf, Marquez Aldous-Scantling mix. He's not quite as good as Metcalf, but he brings a lot of the same elements as him and Valdez-Scantling do. So that's what I see out of him. He's a legit vertical threat, as I talked about. But again, I talked about the limited route tree, kind of just going curls, comebacks, hitches off of those deeper routes, stemming off of them. The rounding of the routes when he does get to a certain point where he is running across the field, sometimes they get too rounded and he can't create quick cuts to get separation. So that's another thing that I think could be worked on. He also had some drop issues, and I think that can be resolved with an Emmanuel Sanders type of guy, just showing him how to catch the football properly and getting reps in with him. I don't think that's a huge issue, but it is definitely something you have to keep out, when you're looking at these guys, because you don't want to have drops in the NFL. We remember the Seahawks game where we dropped like 9 passes. Never fun. But I think he'll be fine. And sometimes he isn't super aggressive at the catch point, which can be concerning. So I think that'll be more of a mentality thing that he can work on. He can still be great in one-on-ones, and he will be that guy in one-on-ones. But sometimes if you're playing like a JC Horn, he might get battled up more often than not. So, yeah, I have a second-round grade on him, but he will slide to the later rounds, I would think, just based on what I'm seeing here. Some people have him evaluated as a 7th-round pick. So 5th-round pick, I think, is a good spot for him. And, yeah, just really high upside, and you replace a guy like Jalen Hurd with Tamarian Terry, and you're getting more probably than what you would have gotten from Jalen Hurd in the first place as a receiver. Maybe not as a runner, but as a receiver, I would say. So next guy we have here, 180 overall, Benjamin St. Just, Minnesota corner. He's kind of like a Akella Witherspoon in the fact that he's super athletic. And, he's more of a physical specimen than anything, and you need to develop him. But he doesn't have the same mental issues that Akello has. Not mental issues like he's crazy or something, just he's not going to be soft like Akello was from what I've seen. He's, very experienced in many different schemes, which does help. I think he'll be the best fit in the cover 3 scheme that we'll run here as a deep third type of guy. So I'm excited about that. He's an exceptional tackler, okay? One thing that I can't say about Akello is he'll always tackle the guy and get him down. Benjamin St. Just always does that on tape, and he'll set the edge against the run too. He's just a really big guy, and he'll make those plays for you. He's an exceptional tackler. That's one of the best traits he has, if we're going to be honest here. He's great at swatting passes, but again, if you're in the 5th round, there's reasons for it, okay? Now, my issue with him is he doesn't have great speed, deep speed that is, so he's kind of like JC Horn in the fact that if he gets exposed, they're probably going for 6 if there isn't safety help. And his hips get turned way too often. He predicts way too early. So receivers can have time to look at his hips and then go a different direction. So that's a real concern with him. But I think if we have good coaching, that can get figured out. But again, we're drafting him because of the specimen he is. He has kind of an average burst to the football. He's not going to see it and then immediately close. It'll take him a little bit of time, most of the time, to get there. Just, like every average corner in the league in that aspect. Now, also, he isn't a very smart football player. He's experienced in his schemes, but he's not going to read the quarterback the way that Elijah Molden would in an elite way. He's probably going to be subpar, if we're going to be honest here, in reading the quarterback and understanding route combinations. But again, I'm picking him here because his upside is way too high to ignore. And the fact that we do need to restock our cornerback room, you get 3 corners in the draft, I think you'd be more than happy with that if you're a team that is going to let go of a lot of DBs.
True.
So, yeah. Let's move on here.
You can always cut the garbage.
Yeah, exactly, if you need to. So now I have Kendrick Green, 193rd overall. He is a guard out of Illinois. He can play anywhere on the offensive line, and he probably projects best as a center. And kind of what I took away from him, again, just the raw aspect of his game is really good. Great lateral mobility and athleticism is what I wrote down from him. His versatility. So a guy like Ben Garland can play anywhere along the interior. He's that same type of guy. He has experience everywhere. He is still a little bit raw at guard. He's more of a center, but you could develop him into that if you wanted to. He's great in space. he'll get out into space and he'll get there quickly. And I think he could be a great fit for the outside zone scheme where you kind of have to figure out where you're going and you need to get out in space so you can make those decisions for who you're going to block. So that's a really, really good thing for him. He has great reach too. So what I saw from him, there was one play, he was lined up at center and there was a guy coming free to the right of him that the guard missed. And he kind of just was able to reach over and stop him just enough to let the quarterback get time out of the pocket. I was really impressed by that. So we'll talk about more about that in a second here because there are some concerns, but that alone is really good. Just being able to see the recognition at that point to be able to stop him just enough for the quarterback to be able to get that out. And another thing, he accelerates through contact. He will maul you if he needs to. He runs through you and he'll put you on the ground if you need to be put down. So that was really impressive for me. But again, with these late round picks, there's always issues that come up. He isn't a very super smart player, I would say. He has a lot of issues with IDing just simple blitz schemes, being able to put the right protection out in the field. Sometimes he just misses where he needs to be. And it's kind of sad. But again, with these players in the later rounds, it's kind of a reality you have to kind of take here. He has short arms too, which is concerning. So kind of like alligator arms, they might be in that spot, but they'll never be quite where you need them to be. And because of that, he'll overextend a lot to try and get there. And when that happens, he loses all his leverage, right? So now when you're like this and you're fully out, the guy can just swat you down, club move, swim move, whatever, and just get inside of you and get to the quarterback. So that is a real concern. And that would need to be something that they develop kind of ways to get around that if he's on the team. Like I said, his radar too and pass protection, really inconsistent. I don't trust it. He's not a super smart football player. But again, all the athletic tools that you see in him can be really, really good when you're in the system where Kyle tends to favor undersized guys because they can get out in space.
And quickly. All right. We got to move along, Tony. Let's get to that next draft pick.
Yeah, so we have one more, O'Brien Goodson. There's no tape on him, so it was really hard to find any snaps with him. But here's what I got away from him. He's an amazing leader with great character, which is something that you can always have more of in your locker room. Like, he is an incredible leader from the way he talks to his teammates to the way he holds himself in public. Really impressive. Also, what I wrote down here, there wasn't a lot to go off on, but from what I saw, powerful with his hands. Kind of like a DJ Jones in that sense where he will get into you and he will shove you if he needs to and really make a difference in that way. It's just super powerful, and that's something that you can't teach. Raw power is kind of a God-given trait. So you have that, you'll be good to go. He can clog up run lanes when he needs to. He's a super big guy. He's 300 pounds. So if he needs to, he'll get into run lanes and he'll clog them. And then this year too, big jump in his production. He went from, I think, 0 sacks, a forced fumble, and a fumble recovery in 2019 to 4 sacks, 2 forced fumbles, and a fumble recovery. So a big jump for what he's doing, and especially along the interior. If you can get anywhere from like 5 to 8 sacks from that position, you're really happy because they're mainly there to free up the edge guys. But if he can create havoc too, that's going to be awesome for you. And I forgot to mention, Kendrick Green is from Illinois and Brian Goodson is from Memphis. So if you wanted to look them up, that's where they are. But again, O'Brien Goodson, some negatives. He's short. He's only 6'1". So you look at Aaron Donald as kind of the exception to that rule where it doesn't matter how tall you are, you're going to be an incredible player. But being short is kind of tough. You look at DeForest Buckner and Eric Armstead, they're 6'7" and 6'8", right? They are huge guys. So being short, you have more disadvantages being able to use your arms. But again, he's powerful with his hands when he needs to be. Super raw as a pass rusher. Doesn't really have an arsenal at all for anything to rush the passer. So that's part of why he's so low. He might even go undrafted. I expect him to go undrafted, but when you're picking at 239 in the draft, you kind of just have to take whoever you like. So yeah. Now, 2 more negatives. Struggles to quickly switch between gaps. So when he gets stuck in a gap, probably not getting to another gap, which can be an issue too in a lot of ways. So that's, again, why he's so low. And then he also just sometimes if there's a bigger lineman who's just stronger than him and he's bigger than him, he can get swallowed up. So these are all concerns I have with him. But again, 239, you're really not putting much of a risk at all into this pick. So just get a guy who has raw power, see if you can develop him.
In a project.
And that's it. And then one last thing, key UDFA. Kyle Juszczyk was just signed, so this won't be an issue. But I had them getting Ben Mason from Michigan, fullback, probably the best fullback in the draft. in terms of just his ability to block and have great character. In the locker room, you don't really want to have your fullback being a troublemaker. So that was my guy here to replace Yushek. And a guy I looked at before him was Torrey Carter from LSU. He has some real character issues, but great route runner, super good blocker, super powerful, kind of like a Mike Allstott. That's kind of his ceiling. But the character issues, I just don't want to take him. So, yeah, that's it.
Yeah, especially if you know that in advance. Tony,
yeah, exactly.
The kid from Fresno from last season, what was his name? Fullback. I'm wondering if, I look at his athletic history. This guy's a wrestler. He's everything you need to be a football player. He's got the football mentality. I understand the guy's a gold medal winner as far as wrestling goes.
Yeah.
I kind of thought about him, and will the 49ers bring him back and try to develop him even further? They won't have to this year, but they could bring him in. I don't like Kyle Juszczyk being the only fullback on the roster, and that's been the case for the last 2 years. I thought they got rid of a good guy in the first 2017 year that was doing a good job, but of course they know better. So,
Yeah, I completely get that for sure. Wow, we've been here for 2 hours now.
We have, Tony. I'm going to go over this stuff real quick here. Tony's trapped. He says 12th overall. Trade down with Chicago. San Francisco receives 20th, 52nd. Chicago receives 12th, 20th overall selection. Cornerback J.C. Horn, of which Tony is crazy about, South Carolina. And 4th overall, trade up with Jacksonville. San Francisco receives 25th. Indy receives 43rd, 2022 second, 25th overall selection. Edge, everybody's favorite wild man, would be known as the Tasmanian Devil if he wasn't American, Azeez Ojulari from Georgia. 52nd overall, trade down with Buffalo. The San Francisco receives 51st, 93rd. Buffalo receives 52nd, 155th. Oh, this is really a string here. Tony did some work here. Guys, you give Tony credit to come up with this elaborate manner of getting picks. It requires a certain kind of mentality and intelligence. 61st overall selection, cornerback Elijah Molden, Washington. 93rd overall cornerback Kyle Trask. No matter what you says about him, if Kyle gets him, he could take him to the next level. 102nd overall running back Demetric Felton, UCLA. And 117th overall linebacker Jamin Davis, Kentucky. 172nd overall. New Orleans trade up with Minnie. San Francisco receives 157th. Minnie receives 172nd. 2022 6th. And then 157th overall selection, wide receiver. It's at Tamarian.
Yeah.
Okay. I've got people pointing all directions here. I'll try. Tamarian Jerry, Florida State. Things are lined up here, so I got to look at my mic. I'm trying to look over the bar here. Okay. 108th overall, cornerback Benjamin St. Just, Minnesota. 193rd overall. Tony's got a bunch of players here. I'm telling you, right? That's the thing. It's most amazing, too. Guard center Kendrick Green, Illinois. 229th overall. Trade with Detroit. San Francisco receives 2022nd. It's at 6. Jacksonville receives 229. And 239th overall. Defensive tackle Brian Goodson from Memphis. Woo! Tony, you brought a boatload of players in for the guys to look at. And Tony, the odds of them all being bad is probably not possible. Some of these guys are going to be good. In fact, if half of them are good, the 49ers will have struck the mother load. That's a lot of picks.
Yeah.
I love it.
And you have to have a lot of picks when you're in the situation where in free agency you can't keep everybody and you just kind of have to sign a bunch of guys. So you have to build through the draft. If you can't build there, you won't be able to at all.
You're right, Tony. And this is the kind of team we are now. We establish that nucleus. Hopefully Jimmy stays in place because I don't want to see another quarterback have to come in and learn Kyle's system. This is one of the things that terrorizes me more than anything else. It takes too long to get Kyle's system down. When I see guys like Matty Ice who struggled, then of course anybody else is going to struggle, let alone a rookie who needs to come in and sit down for a year just to observe what's going on. So this is the way moving forward, if you can get that nucleus established, now you can do the Bill Belichick. Now you can do some of the things that even Walsh used to do. You keep that
Yep.
solid nucleus and plug and play some of these other guys that you know fit the program. I like what you did.
All right. Thank you, Ronbo. It was a lot. And it's more this year because we have so many free agents and so many draft picks. So I know I talked a lot, but I just wanted to get every point down
It's
so I wouldn't have
enthusiasm. I
regrets.
loved it.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, Tony, I want to thank you again. We're not going to be able to have a chance to get any more questions in, but Tony's going to be back later on with his 53-man roster. I had to hold him back today. Tony,
Yeah,
get
I'm
me
glad you
53
did. It's
later.
been way too long. Man.
Thanks, Tony. All right, and guys, we're going to see you later. Did I miss some of these right here? Kevin Wong is dropping little nasty notes. Kevin, thank you very much for your contributions. Okie Niners, the game of football is won in the trenches.
I agree.
That is so true. Tell you. And Coach has got a lot of great comments here, too. Mr. Blocker says, one love, Ronbo. The offensive side, it's about my quarterback and the wide receiver depth, mostly my O-line. D side, it's my secondary long as my D-line can and out into the quarterback's time. You know, Tony, there's so many things. You pointed to a lot of logic in your display tonight. I like the way you think. Everything fits together. Tony, you know, you got a lot of potential as far as you may have front office talent. Tell you what, as you continue to develop,
That would be an amazing job.
it sounds like it for you would be fun.
It
Tony,
would be
again,
fun.
Tony, thanks a lot. I can't wait to see you for the 53-man roster. We're going to go. In fact, hit that like. We're going to start with the celebration for the Juice signing. See you in a few.
All right. Let's
Tony,
go.
all right. Tony, I'm gonna give you the howl, man. Tony, you get noise if you want to on 3, 2, 1. Niners!
You held it for a lot longer. Congrats on that.
Have a great night, Tony.